Hello, my name is Momo and welcome to my YouTube channel. So this is actually my first video, which is super exciting and a little terrifying, but mostly exciting. And what better way to start off by immediately having a cat come and interrupt? Do you have anything to say for yourself? No? Okay. Anyways, that'll probably happen more than once. What better way to start a YouTube channel than with a hate read? I don't know about you, but I love to read good books. Good books. But also sometimes bad books, you know? And I've been seeing so much discourse about this author in particular because she has been, one of her books was recently made into a movie with Sydney Sweeney, which is controversial for a myriad of reasons. I think we all understand that. And I've been hearing nothing but less than stellar reviews. And it kind of feels like a Colleen Hoover situation again. Spoiler alert, we're not talking about Colleen Hoover today. I had to explore it more. I had to see for myself what an experience like this would be like. So today we are reading Frieda Mcfadden. Yay! I wanted to pick one that I haven't seen people go over. Like obviously The Housemaid was the one that was just made into the movie, and I feel like that one's been really popularly like read and reviewed, but I haven't seen anything about this one. So when I saw it, I was like, sure, I guess so. Let's do it. I just wanted to insert a little disclaimer here that I did not make at the beginning of the video, but I just want to clarify that this review is not for Frieda Mcfadden. This review is not for Frieda. It is not for her friends and family. It is not for people who absolutely love her and think that her writing is the best thing ever, which is totally fine and totally okay. This book is going to be critically analyzed, and we are going to be digging pretty deep into it. So that being said, if that's not your vibe, or if you don't want to hear criticisms, or you really love Frieda Mcfadden stuff, this video is probably not for you, and that's totally okay. You can always click on to the next one. Not gonna hurt my feelings. So I have read the first 80 pages. We'll do a little chapter by chapter synopsis. I'll go over the big points. We'll talk about some writing things, we'll talk about some character things, and then we'll kind of go through the whole book, and then when we get to the end, we'll kind of do a big ol' analysis and review and see how we feel. Aren't we excited? Okay, so we are, because literally my first note starts on literally the first page. Very long list of books, also by Frieda Mcfadden. I don't know about you, and this, I will fully say I did not research this. This fully could just be ignorance. I have only heard about Frieda Mcfadden in the last, I'd say maybe 2 years. Generously, maybe a little bit more than that. And this feels like a James Patterson amount of books to have written in such a short period of time. And maybe, like I said, maybe they were not all written during that period of time. Maybe she's been writing for quite a while and only just recently got really popular. So if I'm wrong about that, sorry. But I have a hard time believing anyone who writes that much in a short period of time could be a good writer. Like, minus like Stephen King on cocaine, I have a hard time with that. It always sketches me out immediately when someone's written like a million books in like a very short period of time. Sarah J. Maas. It's fine. Immediately also have notes right into the author's note. So I will say I actually did really appreciate the author's note because I feel like Frieda Mcfadden writes more on the thriller, I would say, than just like straight romance, but I definitely feel like she could easily fall kind of a little bit more under the guise of like the book talk girlies, and some of those books have things that are so triggering in them, and like you'll go to read the description is like, this one's for the girls who bite. Only like the dark, twisted girls will understand that. That's not a trigger warning. Like, I just need to know, like, are babies gonna die? Or, like, I don't really care how dark and twisted you think I have to be. Like, just tell me what the trigger warnings are. And to be honest, I personally don't really have any trigger warnings when it comes to reading, really, besides stupid fucking writing. So I usually just skip the trigger warnings anyways, but I know they're very important to certain people, and it seems ridiculous that they skip over them a lot of the time. Doesn't feel like that should be allowed, but I digress. Because this one's actually good. It was good. It was good. We like it. Because she starts right out and says, even though my books are thrillers, a genre that traditionally has dark elements, I do my best to keep them as family friendly as I possibly can. You're not going to come across any graphic scenes of violence or, and she literally writes out sex, mostly because I know my family members will be reading. However, my people have emotional responses to different things, so I created a list of contact warnings, and you can go to her website. There's all of them. And then I like that she ends it too, that with that in mind, I hope you safely enjoy this journey into my imagination. So I feel like I'm not gonna have a lot of nice things to say too far into this. So I'm gonna say I like that. I like that. I'm glad that she has all those. I'm glad that they're available. I honestly didn't really know. I guess especially with like the movie that got picked to get turned into like the movie that got picked. The book that got picked to turn into a movie. Being the housemaid, I wouldn't have really guessed that she doesn't write a lot of like a little more graphic stuff or like sexual content, but I don't think that stuff's necessary to be able to write a good thriller. So I'm not mad at it. We're not gonna hold that against her. Okay, so basically the whole premise of this, let's do a brief little description real fast. Debbie is an advice columnist. That's pretty much all she does at this point. She does that, and she like tends to her garden, I think. She's not a very memorable character so far. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Just read this like an hour ago. She's already not memorable in really any way. But essentially she is an advice columnist. We periodically get different, advice columns that she has written, and she tends to have a really interesting take on things. That's not quite what you would expect like your standard housewife to be. So interested to see where that goes. Really hope that pans out in an interesting way, because I'm gonna get really mad if we introed all that for it not to really go anywhere interesting. But I'm holding out hope. I'm coming into this with, I wouldn't say high expectations, but we're gonna try. So her very first column is talking about breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and she can't really get her family to eat breakfast, and like, what would you suggest to get your family to stop and eat breakfast in the morning that you cooked for them? And Debbie's advice is that, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Maybe see if there's certain foods that would appeal more to them, see what, they might desire. And then it takes kind of a sharp left turn, and she says, and if that doesn't work, I would recommend installing a padlock on the front and back door of your house. First thing in the morning, lock both doors from the inside and keep the key in your pocket. Let everyone know they will not be leaving the house until they have consumed a healthy breakfast. If they seem hesitant, a simple threat to swallow the key unless they sit down and eat will surely move things along. I have no doubt you will soon be enjoying a wonderful daily breakfast with your family. Okay, so right off the bat, Debbie's a quirky girl. We love to see that. I'm not gonna lie. I read that first thing and I was like, okay, you know what? Didn't really expect to be interested in this at all, and that had me kind of hooked. I was like, okay, all right, I like the twist, especially because I will say later on in this, there's definitely some clunky grammar, some clunky language and sentences, but I will say I do like how tonally it all kept very even, where you just like, you really didn't expect to see that coming. So she gets her snaps for that. And then we immediately go into Debbie's point of view, which, seeing that, I was not excited because, contrary to a lot of how other, you know what I was trying to say, unlike a lot of other people, I don't love split perspective. Not really my favorite way to tell a story. It can be done well. I will say I have read some that were done well. It's just not really my go-to favorite. So I was not really excited when I read that little Debbie up there, but we're holding in. We're holding in. We're giving Debbie a chance. So Debbie starts talking about her daughter Lexi, who is now a teenager. Her daughter has basically banned her from speaking to her in the morning, which a little crazy that you're gonna let your teen daughter like completely boss around your entire life. But I have never had a teen daughter, so I can't say too much about that aspect. But she's essentially giving many pages of just telling us her daughter won't talk to her in the morning. Really, all she has to say about her daughter is kind of that she's a slob, that she likes to wear pajama pants and like oversized hoodies and big like headphones. She doesn't really like. I do and I don't like this. I like that they kind of describe Lexi in a way that they're also describing the main character subtly without being like completely obvious about it, by saying like, you know, Lexi's the one who looks like me, a fact I'm sure is terribly embarrassing to her. She has the same delicate bone structure in her face and a similar shade to her slightly wavy hair. Like me, schoolwork comes easy to her. Like me, she might be a little too smart for her own good. And it's like, okay, I like that we're just not outwardly like just telling me what the main character looks like. You're still telling me what the main character looks like, very uninterestingly. This is literally like 3 paragraphs of what this girl looks like. And not that like appearance can't be important or relevant to books. Of course, people love descriptors of like appearance, etc., etc. It can be relevant. Nothing that's said in here warrants almost an entire page of describing what this teen girl looks like when she looks like just every other teen girl. And apparently this mom looks like every other mom. Like, okay, you mean your whole description is you have slightly wavy brown hair? That's all you've got to tell me what the main character has? Or that she's supposedly so smart that she's, you know, a little too smart for her own good. But yet nothing we've seen or heard from her so far, which I will give her grace, it is page 4. But nothing we've seen or heard from her so far has really screamed, I'm so intelligent. Like, I wouldn't say her, like, you know, monologue is stupid or anything, but it's very simple, and she doesn't really write super flowery or with, like, you know, very, like, excessive vocabulary where she's clearly extensive vocabulary where she's clearly like very educated. Like her points aren't really, I don't know, you're telling me she's like the smartest lady ever, and I'm just really not like getting that vibe from what you're actually telling me about her and what she's actually saying. Like, you can't just tell me that your character is smart and then not show me that at all. And I can confidently say that because 80 pages in, still haven't seen that. Actually, in fact, from another point of view, they specifically point out that Debbie seems a little dumb. Which I will say when we get to that part, I do feel like that was unwarranted. I don't really feel like that needed to be said. But, like, is she too smart for her own good? Or is she kind of dumb? You don't even know, Frieda. You don't know. That's your main character. You don't know? Anyways, moving on. Then she talks about how she named her daughter Alexa, which, to be fair, I agree with her. Not her fault. She said, in my defense, how was I supposed to know Alexa would become a thing? And I'll give her that. But I still thought that was kind of funny to mention. She is wearing lipstick, though, and so her daughter has to break her silence, and she has to ask, why is mom wearing the lipstick? And so she tells her that she has a home gardening magazine who's coming out to take photos of her garden to publish. And so she's got this big photo shoot later on in the morning. So super exciting. Her daughter's even like sort of nice about it, which feels like a lot for her. And then, you know, she talks to her other daughter real quick. She just kind of, you know, runs out. They just barely interact, but she gets, like, as they interact, she gets that her daughter got kicked off of the soccer team, but don't worry, we still haven't gotten to that 80 pages later, so maybe we'll talk about that at some point. Not even sure if that's relevant in any way. But yeah, her daughter runs through, tells her that she got kicked off the soccer team, and then runs off to school. Probably terrified of what her mom will say, of course. And so, you know, she threatens to call the coach. Her daughter's like, please don't call him, please don't call him. So she agrees not to call him. Again, still. And then her other daughter points out the fact that she thinks that the coach is a pervert, her words, and that her friend was on the soccer team and said that he would always accidentally walk into the locker room when the girls were changing. And so, which I'm not I'm not surprised for someone to, like, use that as a plot device. Whatever. I could see some stories potentially where that could, like, fit in. It is a little tired, but okay. Like I said, still haven't gotten into this 80 pages later, which feels a little crazy that your daughter would come to you, tell you that the soccer team that your daughter just, like, very suddenly and very mysteriously quit, that she doesn't want you to call the coach about, that coach is a pervert who's been spying on these girls, and then we just don't give a fuck about that. We have not spoken about that since. And not a ton, like a crazy amount of time has passed in here. A decent chunk of time has passed. And she's just kind of really just living life and hasn't thought once back to this, which is crazy. You just got the news that your daughter possibly maybe was getting assaulted, or at least, like, bare minimum, like, harassed, and you don't want to even think about that one more time? Okay, sure, whatever. She talks about them raising them as kids a little bit more. She starts talking about Lexi's horrible boyfriend Zane, which literally all of this just complaining about Zane. Even a little bit more of this. Literally just complaining about Zane. Literally doesn't like that he has long hair. Literally just doesn't really like him together. Again, also, not showing me anything. Like, you are not showing me that he is not, like, a trusting character. You're telling me he has long, shaggy hair and is skinny as a rail. And, like, you're acting like that should be a reason I don't trust him. That nothing about that is a reason not to trust someone. And then, like, literally, like, doesn't really discuss anything that he's done that would actually, like, make her uncomfortable or make him, like, a bad person to have around or a bad person for her daughter. Literally the worst or, like, only, like, criticism she actually says that has, like, any maybe merit, but I also don't, you'll get what I'm saying. She says, but most of all, I don't like the way he looks at Lexi. There's something in his expression that makes me uneasy. It's something I've seen before, a memory that I can't ever block out. Girl, what the fuck are you talking about? First of all, you don't care about the coach who actually, more maybe legitimately, was creeping on your daughter. But you're accusing this man of creeping on your other daughter just for existing? Like, none of his actions have said that he's doing anything to your daughter. You literally just don't like that he looks at her. And, like, it clearly, like, she hasn't said so far, like, what, you know, I'm assuming she went through some sort of childhood trauma that, like, caused this, you know, this feeling. So she says, like, you know, I can't ever block out. And it's kind of, I feel like, implied in here that it's, like, you know, like a CSA type of situation, or, like, she got assaulted when she was, like, young, or maybe, like, groomed. And it's like, okay, but then if you thought that was actually, like, legitimately happening to your daughter, first of all, do something. She even says, like, I don't want my daughter dating a boy who vapes, not that I have a choice. You do have a choice, actually. Like, you are their parent. And, like, I get what she's saying about, like, you can't, like, just telling a teenager no. Like, no, I don't want you to see that boy. Like, isn't always the most effective situation. There are things you could do. There are things you could do. Absolutely. Especially if you thought a boy was actually assaulting and grooming your daughter, which you are implying heavily right here. Again, also, not thought about again in the next 70 pages. Literally, we don't touch on this again anytime soon. So, again, we care a lot about our daughters that are supposedly getting assaulted. And when you find out what she's actually preoccupied with all of these, go worry about your fucking family. Worry about your family. Okay, so we're still in Debbie's perspective. We're in chapter 3. Oh, okay, before we get into chapter 3, I almost forgot about this little note. She frequently, I will say her writing is not as bad as some of the book talk girlies that I've read. She is a little better about varying her sentences or varying her vocabulary, and she doesn't purely write in like short, choppy sentences, which I find really common with a lot of like the book talk girlies. But I will say, like, not only is she really bad about like just telling me everything and never showing me anything, but then she describes things that are just so boring. And it's like things that could be interesting. Like actions that are happening that could be interesting, and she literally describes them in the most uninteresting way possible. Like, so she's describing her neighbor being very, very angry, coming up to her door to like pound on her door. So like an intense situation, right? Like intense emotion. No. We get, I'm about to return to the kitchen, but stop when I notice another flash of movement out the window. It's my neighbor, Brett Carlson, walking down the driveway that separates our houses. Actually, he's not so much walking as stomping. He's making his way towards our front door. In another minute, he's going to be pounding on it. This day is about to get interesting. I don't even have anything to say about that besides that is just fucking atrocious. I don't understand how that made it past copy editing, because that is the least fucking interesting thing I think I've ever read in my life. So she opens the door. Brett's real fucking angry. He's about to pop a fucking aneurysm. He insists that she pulled the wiring on his house because he plays the music too loud, and it makes her mad because he's kind of a playboy. He like, you know, works in finance, drives a sports car that's too fast, blasts music. So, oh, also to note, she grabs a box cutter when he shows up, which I'm so sorry. If my neighbor came over angry enough that I thought I needed a box cutter to defend myself, I don't think I'm answering the door. Especially as like a woman home alone. I'm not answering that door. But maybe that's just me. But you know, he's like, you know, you went in my basement, you snapped off the switch, I've got no power. She's like, you know, do you have any proof? And he's like, no, I just know that you did it. Which is crazy, because again, we've been given no reason to believe that she would do this or has done this. This guy's never even been mentioned. Even she, like, clearly does not seem to have done this, at least at this point. It does not seem like she's done this. She has no idea what the fuck he's talking about. She's not really interested. And then, super strange little aside that she, like, threw in here. She said, like, you know, this is so preposterous. How would I even get into your basement? And he says, I had a key hidden under the lantern in the backyard. You must have figured out it was there. Okay, so you think this woman broke into your house and cut your wiring, and your first instinct is to tell her exactly where you keep the key from your house? Like, what if she did? What if that wasn't the way she got in? If she really had done it, what if that was not the way she got in? And now she just knows where the key to your house, like, does anyone have more than 2 brain cells in this fucking book? I'm not really believing it. And I literally wrote, why would you admit this to someone you think broke in? Exactly. And then she talks about this whole, like, this long paragraph about how her and her husband play this game when they go to people's houses where they immediately try to guess where their spare key is hidden, and then they tell the people in the house where their spare key is hidden to freak them out. I've never done something like that. I don't know what works for you and your family. That doesn't really work for me and my family. Thought that was really weird. But basically, she lets him go. Eventually, they argue a little bit more. He leaves. So her phone is ringing. She gets a call from her boss because she also works at a newspaper part-time. Obviously, the advice column thing. It's for the newspaper. So her boss just like very suddenly was like, hey, can you stop by the office today? Wouldn't explain why, doesn't tell her what's going on, just tell her that he needs to talk to her. And she's like, okay, well, like, the photographers are gonna be here soon, but like after they're done with all of their thing and everything, like, cool, I'll stop by. Awesome. So this is when, you know, her husband comes in, which, love this description of her husband. This is the first thing we've heard about her husband. Cooper is wearing a white dress shirt with light blue stripes, and his gray tie is hanging loose around his neck. First of all, a white and blue dress shirt with a gray tie? I'm just questioning your fashion. I literally wrote, ew, what a choice. And it's just this, he's freshly shaved and smells like aftershave. Thanks! I know so much about this character now. That was, like, such a good character description. Like, I totally get the vibes of him. For sure. That was such good information. Then they eat a bowl of cereal together. He's being weird as fuck on his phone. He says that he never, like, goes on social media, never goes on his phone. But he's, like, getting a secret phone call and he's, like, not showing it to her and he's, like, secretly trying to hide it. So she's like, that's kind of fucking weird. But when I cannot express to you how much they talk about this photo shoot in this, it's not interesting, which is why I'm not mentioning it every 5 seconds. She mentions it every 5 seconds. She literally doesn't even care that her husband is acting suspicious, acting maybe, like, possibly an affair. So she's so focused on just, like, these guarding people are gonna come take a photo of me, and that's all that matters. Which, like, girly pop, based on your family so far, kind of feels like you should be paying more attention to your family. But, you know, she ties his tie. Oh, yeah. Also, she describes him as he doesn't turn heads, but then again, he never did. What a horrific fucking thing to say about your spouse. I think I would walk off the nearest bridge if I heard that my spouse was thinking about me that way and had always thought about me that way. That's fucking crazy. You should not be with this person. She's like not a good person. I feel like I'm supposed to be like endeared to her because she's like, quirky girl. Like, you're not making me like her. Like, all the qualities you're telling me that are so good about her, you're not showing me. And the qualities you are showing me are not great. Like, this girl's not nice. Or like, the weird, like, banter they have. Hey, he says, you look great. He appears to mean it. Thanks. Okay, girl. Go. Give us nothing. He appears to me. Why are you with this man? Okay. Talks about how they're so cool and they're gonna be so famous with this photo shoot. We talk about all the photo shoot. We're literally still talking about the photo shoot. And then she mentions at the very end of the chapter that he has a meeting with his boss and he's supposed to be asking his boss about becoming a partner in the firm. So it's very clear he's like not really interested in having this conversation. She's very like, so you're having that conversation with your boss, right? Like we're doing that today? Like you're having that conversation with your boss? And he's like, oh, for sure. Then we go to Cooper's perspective because based on his character description, I'm so interested in him. I totally care what he has to say and think. Totally. Then he goes on this whole thing about like how Debbie ties perfect ties and like she's too good for him and he's just, which like clearly she's not helping her self-esteem. Maybe not better self-esteem if you weren't around Debbie. He literally says, honestly, sometimes I wonder how she ended up in this life, married to a schlub like me. Which I never thought I'd see the word schlub typed out on paper. But anyways, saying, yep, you need to talk to your boss, and he's kind of thinking, like, girl, you don't know my boss. Like, we're not allowed to have pictures of ourselves, or, like, our family up. Like, we're not allowed to, like, joke around, or, like, have a personality, or do anything but just, like, work and, like, go home. And so he's very much like, this isn't gonna work up. Like, it's not gonna happen. And he also, too, like, this has already kind of been introduced as kind of a character flaw for Cooper, because he even talks about how he's like choking down this cereal that she got for him because he hates it, but he refuses to just tell her that he doesn't like it. So then he just chokes it down every day, miserable. And it's like, bro, it's just cereal. Just say, hey. You don't even have to admit you don't like it. You could just say, hey, I'm kind of bored of that one. Do you think we can mix it up? Like 2 brain cells. 2. Then he acknowledges the phone call, very sketchy. He says, if Debbie had seen ... I don't want to think about that. Okay, maybe we should think about that, though, because I don't know anything about you. It'd be cool to know, like, one thing about you as a character. So, like, maybe we should think about that. Because it kind of feels like your thoughts may be the only place I'm going to get to know you, and so far you haven't thought anything of substance. Besides the fact that you're kind of a pathetic pushover. And then he gets mad that Debbie's so, like, preoccupied with her photo shoot she didn't make him lunch. And, then he leaves. He gets into a little tiff where the neighbor talks to him about thinking that Debbie did the wiring thing, and he's like, yeah, you're fucking crazy. Understandable, which he goes, I wonder if I should warn Debbie about Brett being on the warpath, but that seems unnecessary. This man is coming up to you, aneurysm blazing, about to beat the shit out of you. Literally, he says, I think I'm about to get into a fight for the first time ever. Literally, I've never been in a fist fight before, but I'm worried it's gonna happen for the first time today, right now. So it's like, this man comes up and you literally think he's about to, like, beat the shit out of you. He's so furious about something that he thinks that your wife did. And you're not gonna warn her? Again! Single woman, home alone right now. I mean, not, like, single as in, like, not married, but, like, single as in, like, she is the only person there. She's the only person there. And we're just, okay. We're not gonna say any... Because he doesn't know they had that conversation. He doesn't know that she knows. And you're not going to protect your wife. Do any of these characters like each other? Do any of them? Because I'm not convinced a single person in this likes each other. Also, literally, how have we gotten to page 30? And the only thing that's happened is she woke up. And they ate cereal. It's been 30 pages. We ate cereal and talked about a photo shoot. That's all we've done. Love that. Chapter 6 is another advice article. So she's talking of this mysterious lady is talking about how she loves jazz, but that her husband won't let her listen to it. And that, like, she doesn't mind listening to his music sometimes, but, like, she never gets to choose. And so, Debbie says, maybe you could make a CD or, like, a playlist that, like, has artists both of you like. Some stuff like that. It's all about compromise. And then she finishes the article by saying, if your husband is not agreeable to this compromise, it's time to get out that sewing kit. Slip an over-the-counter antihistamine into his wine at night. That's a federal crime. And while he's sleeping, you can make a hole in his eardrum using a needle from the kit. They're so handy. Also pretty sure that's a major crime. At least a misdemeanor, I would think. When you've completed the first ear, move on to the second, which you don't think they're going to wake up after the first one? You think you're just going to be able to move on to the second one? Well, okay. Well, I guess antihistamine, so they are sleepy, but even then, piercing your eardrum, excruciatingly painful. Excruciating. I have a hard time believing even on antihistamines you would sleep through that. It can be a little tedious, but it's a fairly simple procedure. After that, he definitely won't mind what you listen to in the car anymore. Which, don't get me wrong, like, with my sense of humor, I love this, like, I don't know, kind of, like, cunty, like, oh, like, what if we actually did this horrible thing instead? Like, that kind of humor, like, appeals to me, whatever. I have a hard time believing any of these get published in, like, a local, they even describe it, like, several times as, like, a family-oriented newspaper. Like, you literally just suggested someone do multiple crimes. And, like, we'll bring this up later when it gets to her meeting with her boss, because this will be relevant. But I just want to point out, like, this is an established thing. Like, she has promoted violence or, like, something of the nature in every single one of these so far. So, really strange for me to, like, I don't know, not really that reasonable for me to believe she's been doing this for so long and they were just, like, okay with this for so long. But then we go back to Debbie, talking about the cameras are gonna be here in 15 minutes. She's getting coffee ready. She's all excited. She talks to her other nicer neighbor for a little bit, who is 87 years old and lives all alone. So she's there for her sometimes. And she tells her about, her photo shoot again. Literally, probably 30 out of these 34 pages have been about the photo shoot. So now we're talking about, okay, the photographer is 15 minutes late. Where are they? So eventually, after a little while, she decides to call and say, like, hey, these people never showed up. Like, what's going on? And they tell her that they actually decided to get rid of her segment and they decided to take on her neighbor, Joe Dolan, her rose garden instead. And Debbie has, like, a long sordid history with Joe. Not anything, like, actually bad, but she just is very jealous of Joe. They go back and forth. They're very catty with one another. They're very, like, they both think that they're, like, the best thing that's ever walked this earth. So they have a lot of, like, strife about it in their gardens. So she's obviously furious. Super furious. She is so furious, in fact, that she decides to go all the way down to Joe's house to confront her about this. Let's talk about the writing here for a second, because nothing in this chapter flows. I feel like the writing was not good, but it does feel like it got slightly worse in this chapter. Like, so much of this just feels like there's every action spelled out. Like, I don't need to know all of these details. Like, we keep the bottle of wine in the cabinet over the refrigerator. I don't care. I have to stand on my tippy toes to nudge it open, and I grasp the bottle in my right hand. Why do I care? I don't give a fuck. Grab it with your right. Grab it with your left. I don't care. You don't need to tell me this information. It's not relevant. Then she just talks about noticing that the bottle of wine the cork has been dislodged. Turns out it's just water. There's no actual alcohol left in it. She immediately starts accusing Zane. No proof that he's done this. No proof he even knows that this exists. Like, this random, because she even says, like, they're not a drinker. They just have this one random bottle of wine that's, like, shoved way back in a cabinet. Why would he know that's there? Crazy though, yeah, we're just blaming him out of nowhere. Or, like, oh my god, we get so into these short, stilted sentences that I hate. They just are so awkward. Like, with the jolt of 100% certainty, I know who it must have been. Zane. Lexi's boyfriend. Okay, first of all, you don't have to tell me that's Lexi's boyfriend. We talked about him for, like, 5 pages and how you hate him. You don't have to remind me 10 pages later who that is. Girl, I fucking know. I wish I didn't know, actually, because you're, like, annoying the shit out of me with him. So, and then there's some sentences that are just, like, blatantly not correct. Like this one that starts with but, first of all. Why are we starting sentences with but? We don't start sentences with prepositions. We know this. But the whole sentence is, but now that possibility is off the table, and I can't stop fuming about what just happened to me. That's not correct. That's not correct. Yeah, and then she decides to go to Joe's house. She specifically says, well, she's not going to get away with it. I'm going over there right now. which I'm sure you're not going to embarrass yourself at all going over there with all those photographers and your neighbor who just doesn't sound like a recipe for you to embarrass yourself at all. We've never heard of a gracious loser. Again, right off the bat, I don't need to know this. Joe Dolan and I live on the same block, but she is on one end and I am on the other. The ground slopes upwards, so if you considered our block to be a hill, I would be at the top of the hill and she would be at the bottom. I don't care. I don't care. It's not relevant. It's not. I promise you, it has not been relevant. And if it somehow becomes relevant way later in the book, tell me then. Because sure as fuck I'm not going to remember. And it's boring. I don't care. I don't care if you live on a hill. Unless the big hill in your road is like relevant to the story, I don't care. I don't. Maybe that makes me shitty. I don't. This is not interesting writing. Literally tell me about anything else. Literally anything else. So, oh my god, yeah, the writing gets so bad here. I just can't, like, again, I don't need to know this, or care, like this. I don't bother to change out of my dress, but I do kick off the uncomfortable heels I've been wearing and trade them out for a pair of ballet flats I bought on sale, 2 for the price of 1. I tried to give the other pair to Lexi, but she looked at me like I was offering her poison, so I ended up keeping them both. I don't care. Why would I ever, in a story, care if you bought your shoes on sale? Like, unless that's a relevant plot point, I don't need to know that. I don't care. I don't care. Like, you can even put in a note about her switching out her shoes. That's fine. That makes sense. You don't really need to tell me that. You literally could have even just mentioned that offhand, like, oh, I traipsed through her yard, so happy that I switched out of these uncomfortable heels as the soles of my shoes sink into her yard, sink into the soft earth. Literally, we didn't need a paragraph of I bought these ballet shoes on sale and I put them on. I literally that was just a tab, like, it's not this hard. Why does she make writing sound so hard? Like, don't get me wrong. Writing is difficult. Writing is not this difficult. Writing is not this difficult. This is a first draft that needed about 10 more revisions before it went to publication. After the shoe paragraph, right, she immediately goes, and then I walked down the block to the road to Joe's house. Yeah? Yeah, you walked down the road to Joe's house when you just told me that you were going to Joe's house? You walked on the road there? Like, and you're telling me the most interesting way, this intense moment. You are filled with rage. This thing that you were so excited about that you have not shut the fuck up about one time. You were so excited for it. And you had this ripped away from you. You were feeling so passionate, so intense. I've got to storm over there right now and I've got to talk to her. And the only way you could describe that to me is, and then I walk down the block, down the road to her house. I refuse to believe that's the best we could do. I really do. She talks about meeting Joe. Joe looks confused that she's there. She ends up telling her that the photographers stopped by and she kind of like waylaid them and convinced them to look at her garden. And she's like, you know, I'll give you a copy of the article when it comes out. We've got to stick together. And Debbie's just like, karma's coming for you. And Joe's like, not really karma. Kind of feels like you're just a loser. Literally says that specifically. Whatever you say, Debbie, but that sounds like loser talk to me. Which honestly, I'll kind of confer. Most of this conversation not only did kind of sound like loser talk, she really just sounded like a sore loser. But on top of that, she doesn't say anything to put Joe in her place. She doesn't make any scathing comments about Joe or her garden. She honestly doesn't even really stand up for herself. She really just says, like, there's such a thing as karma. It means what goes around comes around. Also, like, no shit. Like, I think everybody knows what karma means, but sure. Joe says she doesn't know what the word karma means. I refuse to believe that. You were like a 50-some-year-old woman. You know what the word karma means. So, okay. So she decides, because she can't get drunk, which, like, she couldn't just go to the store, but okay, she can't get drunk, so she's gonna go to the gym instead. So it specifically says, so she says, you know, I become hooked on the rush of the adrenaline I feel as I push my body to the limit on the treadmill. It's better than any antidepressant, and I should know. I've been on all of them at one time or another. And it's like, first of all, this is the only time she's mentioned mental health once. We're on page 45, and this is the first time we've even broached the subject. Though she is very clearly mentally unwell. And she just, like, literally, what did I write? Like, oh yeah, which up to this point we've learned literally nothing about her, and the only thing we know about her husband and her daughters are, like, mean things. So it's like, I feel like I'm supposed to empathize with her here, or be like, oh my god, you know, like, she's so damaged. She's so... I don't like Debbie. You haven't given me any reason to, like, be on her side. Like, all you've shown me is her neglect her family and kind of be a dick to everybody. Like, I'm not on her side. I don't care that she's been on antidepressant. You didn't make me care. Like, I don't really care what her trauma is. Like, she's just kind of an irritating person. And you can write an irritating character. Like, book can have irritating or unlikable, even, like, main characters. That can be done in a really good way. One of my favorite books of all time is Wuthering Heights. None of the main characters in that are portrayed well. Like, in the sense that, like, they are a good person. Like, you don't want to get to know Heathcliff and Catherine. Like, they're shitty people, and that's made, like, very clear to you. But, like, you still enjoy it because of the way that it's explained to you, and because of how beautiful, like, the prose is. And because you've shown me these deeper things and these deeper levels to these characters, that I do really connect with them. So it's like, even though I don't necessarily sympathize with Catherine, I can at least empathize that she's a very passionate person, and this means the entire world to her, and, like, this happening to her is, like, her completely crumbling, and everything she's ever wanted, like, crumbling. Like, it's intriguing, and, like, it hooks you, even though, like, you don't really like her. And I don't necessarily care what happens to Catherine. I don't necessarily think Catherine should just get what she wants, because I don't think that she's a very good person, or does that by, like, good means. But I'm still interested in what's happening. Or, like, you have not made Debbie interesting. Like, you've made her actually just frankly unlikable. So, like, I'm not invested. Okay, I've ranted for long enough. She then talks about getting Japanese beetle traps. Haven't touched on that again, though I do have a suspicion, but we'll get back on that. But she does randomly mention picking up Japanese beetle traps. I'm sure that'll be relevant later. And then she talks about, you know, she, like, has her book club soon, which is also crazy to me that you're gonna do, like, this big photo shoot and then immediately go to, like, a book club afterwards. I mean, like, manage all your shit, girl, by all means. Like, good for you, but that sounds overwhelming, honestly. Also, just the idea of, like, going to the gym, because she says it's 11 and her book club's at 12:30 with these really bougie, like, rich girls that she's gonna want to look really good for. Like, you're not really giving yourself a lot of time to work out. Like, that would put me on, I would be, like, stressed. I would be really stressed out about that. But, like, good for her, I guess. So she talks about this interaction she has with this lady at the register who tries to cut in front of her, and she has this big confrontation with her, where she actually is, like, very forceful. Like, she literally tells the woman, now are you gonna go back there on your own, or do I have to make you? Which, very Karen thing to say. Crazy thing to say to a stranger, but alright. And she talks about the fact that, like, while all this is happening, like, this conflict is happening, she has this buzzing in her head that's getting louder and louder. And when she finally does something, like, aggressive and, like, borderline violent, she says, that's when I noticed that the buzzing has completely vanished. Okay, girl. seems concerning. Kind of feels like maybe we should talk to a therapist about that, but okay, girl, pop off, sure. She's again talking about the gym, and then she runs into Harley Sibern, which is one of the trainers there who teaches spin class and kickboxing. And so they've known each other for about a month. They've kind of become tentative friends, and she invited Harley to the book club. And so, you know, she's just talking about how she thinks Harley's cool. Also, her definition of what makes a person cool is that they have multiple piercings and that there's a pink streak laced in their hair. Because that's the only thing that makes someone cool. Sure. I feel like, to be fair, I have maybe a slightly different view on what's alternative or what actually makes someone cool or not cool. I don't think that would be my criteria personally. But to each their own. She is a sheltered housewife, I will say that. Again, don't tell me that she's cool. Show me that she's cool. You could have had her doing anything. Like, there's so many things you could have done to introduce this character to me, to like show me that she's interesting and show me that she's cool. And instead you just tell me in a paragraph after paragraph after paragraph that like, she's cool though. She's cool though. She's cool. Cool. She's cool. She thinks she's cool. She's got piercings. She's cool. Okay, well, she hasn't done anything cool. She hasn't done one thing cool. So I don't believe you. Again, they're just chit-chatting about going to the book club, and then Harley mentions that she is allergic to avocados, which is relevant later. She says it's not lethally allergic, but it does make her really sick, and so she can't have those. So, chapter 11, we go back to a Cooper perspective. Love. And I literally wrote, not a fan of split perspectives ever, but this is the most boring one I've ever read. So, high hopes. He's talking again about his boss. Like, we didn't already have 2 pages or more of him talking about how his boss isn't a family guy, and his boss doesn't like fun, and his boss doesn't like laughter, and we're literally doing that again for this entire page. I know. That's literally all I know about you, is that your boss is shitty. And you're kind of ugly. That's literally all this book has told me. So, I know. So he's, you know, pumping up for the meeting, ends up, you know, doing the meeting, and literally, oh, he does say the only interesting thing that he said in this entire book so far, when he says, you know, I have an appointment with Ken, and the receptionist, you know, peers up at me through her horn-rimmed glasses that hang from a beaded chain that encircles her neck. Is he expecting you? And he goes, yes, that's why it's an appointment. Okay. I like the sass. I liked that line. Good for you. That's what you should have said. But basically, he goes in, talks to his boss. His boss says, no, I don't. Literally, he says, okay, so Cooper says, maybe, but if anything, the company is bigger than it was back then. I've been a loyal member of the firm, and I could be an asset to you as a partner. Ken rubs his chin. No, he says, I don't see it. Ouch. Why have we only said mean things about Cooper? I'm kind of like starting to feel bad for Cooper, because Ken immediately follows us and says, you do well enough as a worker bee, he says thoughtfully, but as a leader? No, definitely not. Certainly not a partner. And so then Cooper, like a fucking idiot, is like, well, if that's how you feel, then maybe I should just leave. Because he's kind of hoping that he can, like, entice Ken to be like, no, don't leave. I need you. And Ken's like, okay, bye. And he's like, but maybe I shouldn't leave. I actually do like this company. And he's like, all right, do you want the 2 weeks or do you want to leave right now? And Cooper's like, I'll take the 2 weeks. So now he has to go home and explain to Debbie. And he says, oh Christ, what am I going to tell Debbie? She's going to be furious. And as I wrote below, as she should be. As she should be. I understand. Disappointing. You want to make partner. She was already going to be disappointed about that. That's not really great. However, no one made you quit your job. You literally popped that out of nowhere. Nobody made you quit your job. You did that all on your own. So, yeah. Debbie should probably be mad at you. I'm kind of mad at you. Why the fuck would you do that? Stupid as hell. So, we go back to Debbie. Debbie is now waiting for Harley to meet her. They're going to the book club together. And, like, they really preface this of, like, we're going to this really rich house with, like, these really fancy ladies. And, like, Debbie also has a nice house. And all these ladies have nice houses. And they're so rich. And I just don't care. But yeah, so they get to the house. Harley even says, now this chick is really rich. Okay. Rich is not a personality. Like, I'm getting bored of just everybody's rich. Everything's rich. This house is big and rich. Everything's rich. Everybody wants to be, it's not interesting. Wealth can be a very interesting topic. Nothing about this in this book is interesting. Wealth is not used here in any interesting way whatsoever. Literally at all. So they get into the book club, and the ladies right off the bat, like, real catty, not very nice. Like, literally one of the first things she says is like, I love your dress, Debbie. It makes you look older. But in a good way. But okay, like, I don't love that, and I feel like that's really blatant, but okay, at least, you know, you're showing me that she's a catty mean girl. You're not just saying, Rochelle's a catty mean girl. She's mean. You're just showing me, based on, like, the language that she's using and, like, the things that she would say that are not things normal people would say, that she is a catty mean girl. And, like, finally, it only took us 63 pages. Thank you. Thank you for showing me something in this book. Thank you. They go inside. All the girls are mean. There's another 2 girls in there, also mean. Then, you know, they talk about the sandwiches. They're, like, making fun of her because she made the sandwiches herself, which is important. Debbie made the sandwiches, but Debbie put avocado on the sandwiches. And Harley's like, okay, weird, because we literally just had a conversation like 2 hours ago about how I was allergic to avocado, but that's really crazy. And so the girls do, like, try the sandwiches. They say, like, oh, of course I'll try them. Like I said, they're adorable. Like, you can just tell they're homemade. And she's, you know, like, I'm so pleased they're trying them. I wouldn't want all that hard work to go to waste. Which, like, when we find out what happens, it's like, okay, I get it. But, like, I literally wrote, pathetic. They obviously don't want to try your sandwiches. Why would you feel good about this? So I will give that. It's, like, a little bit of a bait and switch. So I'll give Frieda. She can have points for that, too. And then we go to chapter 13, which is now in a Harley's perspective. I literally wrote, oh, her, come on. I don't like this flip perspective, especially when it's not done well. In these books, it's never done well. It's never done well. And we don't need a third one. We really don't need a third person. Especially not Harley. She's not interesting. Literally her first words to us, essentially from her own brain. Rich bitches. How original. No one's ever heard of that insult before. You'll really get them with that one. That's clever. She then repeats it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 times on this half of a page. 8 times. Love that. Also admits that she doesn't read the book. She did not read the book. She just cliff notes the book. Did not read it. Which is, like, good and bad, because on one hand, she just straight up admits, like, the book was too long for her. The book was too difficult for her. Like, she literally tried to read it and, like, couldn't read it. Literally couldn't even get, like, 20 pages into it. But she does note that, like, the girlies are acting all, like, high and mighty, and they're like, oh my god, it's it's like a retelling of King Lear, and like Debbie wouldn't know because she's too stupid and she didn't go to college, but like us, you know, like you couldn't even really enjoy it if you haven't read King Lear. Which Harley does point out that like in the Cliff Notes it like specifically says people think it's a retelling of King Lear, but that's actually a misinterpretation. Though she doesn't actually point this out. Does not stand up for Debbie, even though she knows for a fact that that's incorrect. She just lets these people talk down to them. And let me tell you, like, these girlies are talking down to Debbie. Like, she literally says, where is it? Debbie goes, well, I liked the book, and I've never read King Lear. And Rochelle goes, well, of course not. You never went to college, and that's the sort of book you need to read at a collegiate level. Like, these girlies are awful. And I was like, crazy she forgot about my avocado allergy, but like, and also, this is what I'm pointing out too, where like, you're telling me that Debbie is so smart. Like, she's so smart. She's too smart for her own good. But then this is literally the description I get of her from like one of the other main characters that we're literally getting a inside perspective on. She literally says, unlike the three of them, Debbie is actually nice. Sometimes it seems like she doesn't have much going on upstairs, but she tries her best. Is that really the description of a, oh, she's too smart for her own good? Like, is she dumb or is she smart? I can't tell. I'm leaning towards dumb. I don't know. I don't know what she's supposed, I don't get it. She complains about not having a big house, talks about the Cliff Notes thing, which again, like I said, crazy that you're just gonna let these women talk to your friend like this and not say a word about it. But okay. And then Rochelle gets kind of shitty with her, and because Harley says, you know, I wouldn't mind reading something shorter. And she goes, well, it's like drinking a fine wine. If you can't make it through 600 pages, you're not gonna make it through 300. Which, like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not how math works. But okay, sure, girl. Whatever. And they're literally like, these women are like gonna kick Debbie out of the club, are literally saying like, I just don't think it's worth discussing any books that hasn't won a Pulitzer. We shouldn't have to dumb down our book choices for people with less education. If Debbie can't participate, we can meet separately. Like, they're gonna kick her out. And again, Harley does not stand up for her. Does not even say a word in her defense, even though she's like very uncomfortable with this. But right at that moment, Rochelle gets sick. She starts turning green. She has to run off. She starts puking. The other two ladies run out. They also, one of them seems like they made it home. The other one doesn't make it home, starts puking in the yard. So clearly, seems like all of these girlies got food poisoning. And the only thing Debbie made was the sandwiches. The sandwiches, conveniently, that she made that Harley couldn't eat. I wonder what could have happened. It's almost like maybe those Japanese beetle traps might have had a role to play in this. Also psychotic. I get that these women are bitches. I get it. If it really is the Japanese beetle traps that she used, because they haven't said yet, that's insane. Like, someone could have died from that. And like, these girlies are awful. I don't think they're really worth murdering because they wanted to kick you out of a book club. Like, I'm not on Debbie's side. And I should be. It should be, because I love like feminine rage, but this is not feminine rage. This is just Debbie kind of being a fucking psychopath and making really stupid decisions and like they haven't made any of these like characters or anything like egregious enough or me invested enough to like care. Like, yeah, if she had made me really hate Rochelle instead of just making her like comedically evil, like maybe I would have been like, hell yeah, she got poisoned, awesome. But I'm just like, okay, you committed a felony, and for why? You could just stop going to this book club. It's not that serious. Like, chapter 14, we go back to like an advice column, and she talks about how her husband doesn't want her to work. He like set up their credit card. He only gives her like a small allowance. He doesn't like buy her anything. Like he makes her like save up her teensy tiny allowance, like if like say her shoes break or something. When she asked him about getting a job, he like freaked out and stuff. And so they're like, this says it comes from the drafts folder, so there's some parts that are like scratched out, but her response, it says, is like, what you are describing is financial abuse. Your husband is using money as a way to control you, and he deserves to suffer. You don't need his permission to get a job. You don't need his permission for anything. My advice is that you should slip poison into his wine at dinner and speak to a divorce lawyer. I'd be happy to give you more information on poisons that are unlikely to be detected on autopsy and local legal options if you'd like to contact me through my email address on the website. Yes, that's definitely financial abuse. I'm all with her on like, yes, we should do something about this. Not sure if slipping poison into his wine is the best advice. But okay. I do like that she stood up for that and pointed out that that was financial abuse right away, because crazy. So then we fast forward to Debbie having the meeting with her boss. She goes, you know, to the Hingham household, which is the newspaper that she works with, which is like very dead. And she notices when she gets there that not only is the receptionist acting weird, but her like the main editor lady is gone. Like her desk is empty, there's nothing there, like there's no remnants of her, which is really strange. So she goes in, and I feel like I don't even really need to like describe the boss or the receptionist, because Frieda Mcfadden gives us no interesting descriptions of anybody. Literally the only description of the receptionist is that she's so gorgeous. That's it. The boss, he's in his early 40s, maybe a year or two younger than I am, and he's always clean shaven and well dressed. I literally don't think I could write a more boring description if I tried. Like, you wonder why I don't connect to any of these characters, because why would I? They're nothing. They're a nothing burger. Everything about this just means nothing at all. So basically, he's talking to her about the draft that I just read. And she took out the parts about the poison, of course, left in the points about the divorce lawyer and everything. And he's basically saying, like, she did leave him, and her husband's really mad, and he's threatening to sue the newspaper, and basically they had to fire her, and they had to fire Bernice, the editor. And they basically were just like, well, it was a family-oriented newspaper, like, you should have known that, like, we couldn't just be telling people to, like, get divorced, like, you shouldn't have done that. And so, you know, she is packing up all her stuff, she's getting ready to leave. They're like, you know, hey, we need the key back. And she says, it's funny that they're so worried about the key. That isn't the thing they should be worried about me having. At the thought of this, the buzzing suddenly stops. Which we know the buzzing stops when she's going to do something violent or a crime. What could she possibly have from this newspaper that would be worth, like, maybe her I don't know. It's got to be something, but, like, what do you mean? This isn't the thing they should be worried about me having. That actually did pique my interest a little bit. I will give her that, because I was instantly like, okay, what would you have from a newspaper? Like, because I was like, oh, maybe the boss cheated with, like, the receptionist. But she says, like, she's so gorgeous that it's not surprising that I've seen Garrett checking her out when he thinks nobody is looking. But that doesn't read as, like, someone who has seen these people, like, sleeping together when they shouldn't have or something. So very curious about what that's gonna be. But yeah, basically it's like 4 pages of them just saying, like, you shouldn't have told this lady that. And she leaves the office where she says, you know, even if it's just a silly local paper, I enjoyed my job. I liked giving advice. My own life has felt like a mess, but when it came to other people, I always seemed to know exactly what they should do. First of all, no, girly, you recommend they do serious crimes. I don't think you know what they should do. You recommend they do serious crimes. And then she ends, it's time to start taking my own advice. First of all your advice is about crime. I don't think you should be taking your own advice. I literally wrote, not a good idea for you, babes. Not a good idea for you. You don't have good thoughts. You do not have good thoughts. We should not be doing that. I am gonna read the next, I don't know, 80 to 100 pages, and then we will check back in and hope to God that we have gotten better. I don't have a lot of hopes, but hopefully. Hello, it is a new outfit, a new day, and we are back with Dear Debbie. How exciting. I was just gonna read the next 80 chapters. That was my original plan. 80 chapters, the next 80 pages. That was my original plan, but honestly, the more I read, I wouldn't say the book itself enticed me to read more, but the desire to not be reading this book anymore and never have to read this book again propelled me to finish it, if that makes sense. I did not want any more reading sessions of this book. Like, I wanted it to be done. Chapter 16, we are still in Debbie. She's baking, you know, her daughter comes in, and it's every interaction that she has with her children, I think, is just so irritating, because not only is she like, I don't want to say she's like a bad mom, but I wouldn't say she's like a great mom. But on top of that, they're just plot devices. They're not people. They aren't interesting. They don't have personality. There's nothing about you that makes you pay. They disappear for such long periods of time. There were several points that they would pop up and I forgot she even had kids. I was like, oh, yeah. Like, I shouldn't be forgetting entire members of your family as I'm reading the book. But they have like, oh, and then she also acts like she's so superior at one point, because she's like, I can tell by the footsteps on the stairs that they're Izzy's. First of all, everybody who grew up with somebody or multiple somebodies can do that. I could do that on my friends. I could do that even at my friends' houses. I could tell with their family members were walking around. It's really not that hard. And also, if we use 2 brain cells, every person in this family is a much different size. Like, the mom to the dad to a small, tiny girl, you know, to a like 17-year-old girl. Like, obviously they're gonna sound different. But she is mom of the year because she knows somebody's footsteps. Girl, we all know that. Everybody, that is just a given. I'm legally deaf and I know that. Like, she literally says, I pride myself on being able to distinguish the members of my family just based on their footsteps. Go on, girl. Give us nothing. But basically she talks to Izzy. Izzy says, don't talk to Coach Pike. She says, I'm not going to call him. So she decides to just go to the school and show up and talk to him in person and say that this isn't lying to her daughter. That it's not a lie, because she's not going to call him. She's going to go there. Ugh. I don't know about that one, Coach. Fast forward to chapter 17. We are now in Cooper. So he goes to the gym with Jesse, which is his coworker. There will be more about him later, but honestly, most of the story, he is so irrelevant. I don't even think in my notes that I even named him until like the end of the book, because he's just so irrelevant. He's literally just like a sounding board for Cooper to like talk off of, and he only appears like 2 or 3 times anyways. Like, he's not very significant. But anyways, we'll get into that later. They decide to go to the firing range. This is where we find out that Cooper has a gun that Debbie doesn't want him to have, that he keeps in the garage. And, you know, then they leave and go to the firing range. So we fast forward to chapter 18, which is Debbie, and she goes to the school and she confronts Izzy's coach. She finds out that the reason that she got dropped from the team is that the coach had asked her to lose weight and she had not lost weight, which is fucking crazy, because we're talking about like 13-year-olds, which Debbie is like appropriately upset about. And like, I did not like this man. I do not like this man. This is about the only people that I'm like, yeah, Debbie, fuck him up, because I do not like this man. Like, she walks in, he's already like creepy staring at her. already hate it. The way he talks about girls' bodies, I hate it. He goes, I told Izzy she was too slow and she needed to lose some weight before the next season. 15 pounds at least, but 20 would be better. Like, stone him. Actually. Oh, especially, oh my God. Then he ends it with, and nobody wants to watch a bunch of chubby girls running around the soccer field. That eyeful isn't going to make the crowd happy. Hell, I don't want to see it. Hell, that's where you should be. Like now. Oh, and then he tells Debbie to lose weight. And I forgot to mention, she does bring him some brownies. That is relevant later. But she also brings him a plate of brownies. They have this horrific conversation. And then she just leaves. So chapter 19 is a Cooper chapter. And so he goes home. Debbie does not tell him about the photo shoot not happening. He specifically asks about it and she just pretends like it happened. She doesn't tell him anything about it. In return, he does not tell her anything about quitting his job or talking to his boss. He just completely, and in his head, he's like, okay, well, you know, like, I can find a new job. And, like, in the meantime, like, Debbie's got her job. Because, again, Debbie didn't tell him that she lost her job. Nobody tells anybody anything in this relationship. Nothing important. Why would you want to have open communication with your spouse? None important. So he then tells her he's gonna leave and go get fast food because, like, the vibe's a little weird. And he, like, specifically goes and, like, sends out a sus text. Like, it doesn't actually tell us, like, what the text message is. He just sends out, like, a sus text message. And then he turns off his location before he leaves. And he dips. He even specifically says, I'll tell her I must have been in a dead zone, but I'm sure as hell not sharing my location with her for the next couple of hours. She can't know where I'm going. So chapter 20, we get another Harley chapter, which is, like, Debbie's friend from the gym. So she talks about how she lives, you know, like, in a little basement apartment on a dead-end street. There's not really anybody on the street. It's important later. And she gets this text message that says, can I come over? And I literally wrote, there's no way it's not Cooper. And you know what? Sure enough, we find out on the next page that, yes, it is Cooper. And Cooper is having an affair with Harley. Also, I cringed so fucking hard because literally just on this page alone with a quick scan, I see 4 separate instances of when she uses the word sexy, which, like, it's fine. Whatever. Are there better words you could have used here? Yes. But, like, use it once. That's fine. I'll allow it. I'm not going to be mad at it. But literally just in this one little paragraph, 3 times we get, I throw it open and he's standing there looking a bit guilty like he always does, but at the same time, really sexy. Literally the next sentence, maybe it's sexy that he's guilty. And then literally 3 sentences later, I smile at him. That flutter in my chest that I always get when he shows up at my door. God, he's sexy. Girl, it's been 1 paragraph. I get the fucking point. You're a doctor? You know that a thesaurus exists. Please, for the love of God, look one up. I'm begging. And, you know, she's delusional, of course, and she ends the chapter saying, as he carries me to the bedroom, I can't help but think to myself that one of these days, at the end of the hour, he's going to decide that this time he's not going back to her. Girl, you and every other mistress. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Girl, I don't know why you thought that was going to happen. Ugh. Don't get me started. We then fall over to, you know, another Harley chapter. She talks more about how, like, Cooper and her are laying in bed and he's, you know, telling her, like, him and his wife are, you know, like, they're, like, strangers. They're not really intimate anymore. Oh my God. And then I get one of the worst paragraphs I think I've ever read when it comes especially to women and feminine, and oh my god. Okay, I'll just read it to you. I know what you're thinking. I'm a terrible person, a homewrecker, and you wouldn't be wrong. God, I just want a singular sentence that's not a fucking fragment. Anyways, but the truth of the matter is that humans are not meant to be monogamous, especially men. Biologically, they have a compulsion to spread their seed to as many women as possible. And also biologically, Debbie is past her childbearing years, whereas Cooper, at 46 years old, has many reproductive years ahead of him. Biologically, Cooper is designed to want me. I don't even think I need to elaborate on that. I just But yeah, then we find out that Harley has been actively stalking Debbie this whole time. The whole reason she even became friends with Debbie was it was like this planned, like manipulative thing where she wanted to find out more dirt on the guy that she was fucking's wife. And so she specifically stalks her and like specifically like becomes her friend. And she specifically says directly, I get the feeling she doesn't have a lot of friends, and the truth is, neither do I. Cooper would be furious if he knew I was spending time with his wife, so I've been careful not to mention it. I'm so sorry. Is this relationship so bad? I refuse to believe that Debbie, someone who doesn't have a lot of friends and is clearly like clamoring to fit in and like desperate to fit in and have people like her. I refuse to believe that she has not mentioned to Cooper one time that she has made this friend. She never mentioned that she met her, that they've got coffee a bunch of times, like they're like hanging out now. Like, I refuse to believe that she has never said one word about this lady. Like, that does not feel feasible to me. Like, even if you're not like the type who's like super communicative with your husband or something, like at no point over the month it's been happening, he's like, oh, what'd you do today? And you're just like, ah, yeah, I got coffee with Harley, and then I went to like the grocery store, and then that, like, again, I really have a really hard time believing that. And then literally, like, Cooper, I made a note here, and I'm glad I fucking did, because Cooper even specifically says at one point, like, word for word, that whenever they come home, like, they come home together, like, she'll tell him all about her day. So I refuse to believe that she has not mentioned one time, and that is, like, a plot point. Like, it's confirmed. Like, she has not mentioned that she is hanging out with Harley regularly. And it's like, girl, I refuse to believe that that's happening. Chapter 22 is a Debbie chapter, and she overhears Zane and Lexi, her daughter, arguing on the front porch, and she can't really tell like exactly what's happening, but she opens the door when Zane like grabs Lexi's arm, so it's like clearly, you know, kind of escalating a little bit. And then, you know, that kind of breaks it up. Zane leaves. You know, she tries to like connect with her daughter and get her daughter to talk to her about it. Of course, her daughter's not fucking interested, because I wouldn't really be that interested in talking to Debbie either. And she doesn't really like ask in ways that are, I don't know. It's just, I don't think it would have really given me the atmosphere to want to confide in Debbie. So the next chapter is still a Debbie chapter, 23. So Cooper comes home. He's been gone for 2 hours, which is crazy because he said he was going to go get fast food. 2 hours. Crazy. So she confronts him, asks him, you know, where he's been. And he tells her, you know, I was just driving around. I was just trying to clear my head. And she's like, why did you turn your location off? And he's like, no, it must have just been dead zones. And then he did something I actually didn't expect him to do. He tells her that he quit his job, and he kind of explains to her, you know, like what happened with the scenario and like why that happened. And, you know, she's upset, but like she's more upset, like she's upset at Ken. Like she's not upset at Cooper for quitting. Like she's upset that Ken even put him in this scenario and that like Ken would let him go. And you know, I do kind of agree with Coop. He says, you know, I just want to move past it and find something else. This could be a blessing. I was never going to become a partner there, so maybe I can find something better. And I do agree with that. Like, one of the only times I've ever agreed with Cooper, actually, where it's like, okay, yes, would have been good to, like, find a job before that. Yeah. But I get, given the situation, like, why he would have felt that way or wanted to do that or, like, been pressured into that. There is something that gets brought up in this chapter, though, that I have to talk about. It has been relentless getting through this book. Whenever Debbie gets, like, a little bit upset about something or, like, a little bit frustrated, she gets this, like, noise in her head, right? That just gets louder and louder and louder the madder she gets. The only way this noise is described in this entire book, the one word that is used to describe that is buzzing. Let me give you an example. That buzzing in the back of my head starts up again, and I feel my hands clench into fists. I don't even want to fucking know how many times this book says the word buzzing. Literally, Debbie gets this feeling like every other chapter, and every single time, the only word that is used to describe it is buzzing. If I hear the word buzzing one more fucking time, I swear to God, you're a doctor. Get a thesaurus. Please. I'm begging you. But she ends the chapter on a very ominous note. You know, she says, you know, Ken made a huge mistake. You're his best employee. Cooper just says, maybe. She goes, you are. Trust me. Ken Bryant is going to regret letting you go. Deeply. Okay, Debbie. All right. Calm down. And then we get another Dear Debbie's drafts. Am I gonna... Yeah. I'm not gonna lie to you. As I was reading this through, it was not until about halfway through that my brain processed that these said drafts. And I have several notes and was so confused where I was like, there is no way this girl is getting these published. Like, how would she possibly be getting these, like, published throughout time? Yeah, they're all drafts. I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but I was very confused by that when I got to the end. I don't know how my brain just jumped right over that word, but it sure did. So... don't think I said that earlier. All of these are drafts. They all come out of, like, a draft folder, not, like, a published folder. But anyways, so this lady asked, you know, my husband snores really bad. You know, we've tried a bunch of things. Nothing really works. What do you suggest? And so Debbie suggests, you know, snoring's super common, you know, regular exercise, reducing alcohol, weight loss, side sleeping, or, you know, you could always just smother him to death. You know, why not? Okay, so chapter 25 was a lot. Chapter 25 is a chapter. We find out a lot of things about Debbie in this chapter. So she sneaks out at 2 o'clock in the morning while Cooper is sleeping. She tells us this becomes a huge plot device in this book, and I despise it. I don't like it. So a huge plot point from here on forward, plot device, I would say, is that Debbie is growing opium poppies in her garden, just casually. And she's researched how to extract the opium out of the poppies, which she then drugs Cooper with so she can sneak out and he'll be, like, fast asleep. This is there are layers to why that's a problem. I don't believe. She's also, like, notes that she's also growing poisons. She's also growing, like, the ipecac berry. She has a whole garden full of poisons, and I'm sorry, I refuse to believe that nobody saw this, nobody noticed this, nobody red flagged this, none of her neighbors noticed this. The garden magazine that was coming out to visit, you're telling me they didn't notice that everything she was growing is, like, poisonous and dangerous? And, like, also, if you're growing all these things that are poisonous and dangerous and, like, not necessarily, like, the most legal things to be growing, why the fuck would you want a garden magazine to come out to your house and take pictures of it and document that publicly? Like, girl, you're, like, committing a crime. Why the fuck would you want that in a magazine? That doesn't make any sense. Nothing about this makes sense. This would not happen. Also, they act like the climate for all of these plants is the same. All of these plants do not grow in, like, the same climate and, like, the same conditions. They're not all plants that you would just, like, have casually growing out in your garden. I don't like this. It's stupid. It's stupid. And it doesn't make sense. And so much of this book is going to reference this in the future. And I'm so sorry because it's so dumb. I don't like it. And I'm not hating on you. If you're fine with it, that's fine. I don't like it. I think it's kind of stupid. And I don't like that I have to read about it every other fucking page for the rest of this book. Super annoying. But anyways, so she drugs Cooper. And then she goes, not to, I don't know, Coach Pike's house or Ken's house. My first thought was that she was going to Ken's house, to be honest. No, she goes to Joe Dolan's house, which is the lady from the beginning who, like, stole her photo shoot and has, like, the garden full of roses and stuff. I'm not gonna lie, this book was so forgettable, and all of the characters are just so flat and so uninteresting that I had genuinely forgot that the photo shoot thing and Joe even fucking existed. By the time I got to this, I didn't even remember them, and this is on page 118. Like, that was not even that long ago, and I didn't even remember you existed. Like, everything about this book is so forgettable. So she goes and takes those Japanese beetle traps that she had brought previously, and she buries them in different places around, like, Joe's garden. And then she gets in her car and she drives to Coach Pike's house. So at Coach Pike's house, we don't really get a whole lot in this chapter. She basically admits that she poisoned the dinner party, or not the dinner party, but, like, the book club earlier. She does admit that she poisoned them. And then she admits that she put drugs into Coach Pike's brownies so that he would also be drugged and not wake up. And the last, like, shot we get is her, like, entering his house. But again, I have to point out, because I put in big old letters, the buzzing. The buzzing. We're buzzing. Our heads are buzzing, guys. She literally says, I will read this one small paragraph to you. I pull over down the road, recognizing that it could be problematic to park directly in front of Coach Robert Pike's house. I don't know why we needed his full government name there either. Back when I was sitting in his office, I had an uncomfortable buzzing in the back of my head. I'm still buzzing now, but it's different. This time I'm buzzing with excitement. 3 times? Sorry if you're wearing headphones, especially 3 times in one paragraph 3 times. It's not even a good word to start with. Why are we doing this? Please stop. It doesn't stop. I'll probably stop pointing it out, but just know it's bad, okay? It's bad. So Debbie leaves at 2. Cooper actually wakes up at 3 in this next chapter. He feels super sick to his stomach. He gets up. He ends up getting sick. He feels, just real off, real not good. Can't really understand. And he's wondering where Debbie is. He's like, man, if I'm sick, like, she must be sick. It's probably from the food. She's, like, not in bed. She's not upstairs. He goes downstairs. She's nowhere to be found. And he kind of points out that Debbie's been acting really strangely for at least like the last like 6 months. She's been forgetting things that she would normally do. And she just like, you know, has suddenly like stopped making the bed, forgetting to make them dinner, just like little things that she would always get that she just like has not been managing to get this like around now. It's a weird way to say that, but you get what I'm saying. She's been a little different lately. That's what I'm trying to say. So he decides that he is gonna tell her about what's been going on and like where he was and all of this stuff. He's gonna come clean with her. And then he realizes that her car is gone. And the more that he thinks about how he feels, he's like, I don't really feel like food poisoning sick. Like, I feel like someone drugged me. Like, I feel off. And so he goes and he looks at her location and he writes down the address. So he decides that whenever she comes home, he's going to confront her and he's going to tell her about his secret and she's going to have to tell him about her secret. Except he gets into bed and 2 minutes later passes the fuck out, completely asleep. Chapter 27 is another crazy Debbie chapter. But before we get into that, I have to point out. So this chapter starts, I wake up early the next morning feeling oddly refreshed, even though I took a little middle of the night excursion. This is the third chapter in a row that has started with someone waking up. I get it. I get what's happening here. Please, just jump me into the action. You don't have to give me this, oh, they open their eyes every single time we start a chapter. Let's move on. We don't need to be doing that. That's not interesting. So Cooper's passed out. She takes a shower, she gets in her car, and she drives over to Ken's house. So Ken doesn't even like know who she is when she first shows up. She has to be like, yeah, like I'm Cooper's wife. And so he ends up letting her inside. They talk a little bit. He says basically like, I'm better off without Cooper. He's not very like interesting, or like he's not going to go very far in this job. So like I'm better off without him. So Debbie pulls out a gun. Debbie pulls out a gun and she, well, first she just tells him to sit down and she confronts him. But she specifically says, oh, and again, she admits to not only poisoning the sandwiches, she also admits that she did cut the wires in that fuse box from earlier. If you were wondering, she did do that. She admits to it here. Though, that guy never comes up again. We never address that guy. It is literally, like, she never even has to speak to him again. Crazy that, like, we would even just, why did we even bring that into the story? Why was that even in it? We didn't need that. But then she says, as she ends the chapter, I'm glad I wore black to hide the blood stains. Debbie's gonna kill somebody. I've never been less interested. Like, so much about this has been written so boringly that even the moments of action, you're just kind of like, yeah, okay, man. I don't know, Debbie. Shoot somebody. Okay. All right. Like, I feel like I should have these stakes where I'm like, no, Debbie, like, don't do it. Like, you're gonna ruin your future. Or, like, they're gonna catch you. Like, Debbie, don't do it. Or it should be like, oh my God, Debbie, do it. Like, do it. He's the worst. Like, I was just bored. I was like, yeah, okay. Sure, man. I guess she's gonna kill him. That seems right. I should not feel that way when your main character is about to kill someone for what is implied is the first time ever. I should care. I should care that that's happening. I didn't care. I don't care. So chapter 28 is a Cooper chapter. And he wakes up in bed, you know, kind of disoriented, kind of out of it. And he wakes up to Debbie's phone ringing. And he looks, and she's got a bunch of missed calls from her boss. And he picks up the call, which is her boss, currently calling. And so he's like, Cooper, where the fuck is Debbie? I need to talk to Debbie. And she finds out that not only did Debbie get fired from her job, but she didn't tell him, but on top of that, that Garrett is, her boss, is convinced that she put a sex tape of him and the receptionist up as their, like, front page for their newspaper, which never goes away. Even at the very end of the book, he has not figured out how to make that go away. So that's fun. Obviously, like, Cooper gets a little upset about the way that her boss is talking about her, and so he ends up just being like, Debbie didn't do this, blah, 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 you know, hanging up on him. Even though in his head he's like, I kind of think Debbie might have done that, actually. Like, I kind of am pretty sure Debbie actually probably did do that. She's really good with computers. Like, she probably did that. And so he confronts her about it, sort of. He doesn't directly say, like, you did it, but he's like, you know, Garrett thinks you did it and all this stuff. And she's just like, oh, like, how would I have even gotten that video? You think I've just been holding on to a video like that, just waiting to, like, get back at it? Like, that's crazy. I would never do that. She would never do that, guys. Chapter 29 is also another Debbie chapter. It's kind of her looking at her phone and seeing that she has a million messages, and then admit that, yes, she did do that. Like, she was the one who did it. Like, that was her. Her daughter comes in. They have a little back and forth where her daughter asks her for a ride to school, which she, like, pretty much always gets a ride with her boyfriend at this point. So the mom kind of, you know, Debbie kind of peeps, like, hey, maybe something's happening. And then she literally talks shit about the Zane kid for, like, 2 pages. And, like, I get it. The kid's not likable. I don't like him either. I'm not saying that he's a likable character. You are, like, a 55-year-old woman who is constantly shitting on, like, an 18-year-old kid. Like, he gets so much more vitriol than anybody else in this story. Like, none of the snooty moms, like, no, literally the only person I think that gets, like, disparaged more than he does might be, like, this one guy, we'll get into it, that, like, did some shit. But honestly, I don't even think so. I literally think Zane might be the most hated person in this book. And given the context of what we're going to talk about later, that's actually really fucking funny. But yeah, this is a grown adult complaining about a child. Come on. And then we get another Dear Debbie's drafts. This one is about someone who doesn't like her daughter's boyfriend. Surprise, surprise. And so Debbie suggests that you invite him over, maybe get to know him a little bit, or you invite him over and while he's over, you snip his brake line. It kind of feels like there might be a solution somewhere in the middle of those two things, Debbie. But what do I know? So chapter 31 is a Debbie chapter. Literally all that happens to this chapter is she drives the kids to school and they see a cop car. That's it. So 32, still Debbie. She is talking to some of, like, the snooty moms from, like, the book club and stuff. And this threw me so hard. Okay, so we're in chapter 32. We are on almost a page 150 in this book. This has been 24 hours. Because I was so confused when I read this. Because, like, the way it reads is, like, yes, there's a lot of sleeping and, like, waking up. But, like, I feel like it really reads like there's more time in between, like, these events happening, which would, like, make a lot more sense. No, everything that has happened so far has happened in the last 24 hours. Because she just had that book club yesterday at, like, noon or whatever, you know, early afternoon. And she literally says here in chapter 32, a group of parents are milling about close to the school. I recognize one of them, Tabitha, who still looks a little green after our book club meeting yesterday. So much is, how did we get from Debbie being, like, a normal person getting a photo shoot to Debbie murdering someone in less than 24 hours? Like, the timeline, the more you think about it and the farther we get, like, really does not make a lot of sense. Like, these events would have made a lot more sense to me if they were, like, spaced out over time. I just have a really hard time believing that she has, like, gone through this, like, entire descent to madness to escalate to the point of her killing someone in like 24 hours. Like that, especially given like the situation she's been put in, does not make a lot of sense. Like, now you give me like a girl who's kidnapped, who's like trying to escape from a serial killer or something. Yeah, I could see a descent to madness that leads with her killing someone over the course of 24 hours. That's a very extreme circumstance to be put in. Debbie just went to book club. But they find out that Coach Pike is getting arrested, and they don't really know yet what he is getting arrested for, but he does shout as he's leaving, like, I don't know how that stuff got on my phone. So not a great start. We know it's something not great, but they don't tell us what it is. So chapter 33 is a Cooper, was it a Cooper episode? But sure, a Cooper episode. He talks a little bit more about Debbie being weird. She like burned the pancakes and she never does that. And then he heads to work and he finds out that his boss just left for like a very impromptu fishing trip, which his boss does leave for fishing trips, but they always like, they know weeks in advance. If they call him, he answers his phone right away. Like he's a good boss. He's on top of his shit. And for him to just suddenly not show up and then just say that he's not gonna do it, like, that's weird for him. And Cooper's first thought is that Debbie has something to do with this, based on like what she said, which we're already getting to the point where we're thinking about Debbie for all of these things. Maybe we should do something about this, but okay. So he's starting to think like, yeah, maybe it's Debbie. And then him and Jesse have this little conversation that's like a little illuminating, where he talks about like them all going out to dinner and how Debbie was super jealous and she like spilled her water on purpose so like the waitress would have to clean it up, and she like didn't like the waitress. And he kind of says like, you know, she's always been jealous, she's always been kind of shitty. And Cooper's kind of having this moment where he's like, shit, like maybe my wife isn't exactly who I thought she was. Which, yeah, man, what took us this long? Okay. Oh, also, he has buzzing now, too. He can't turn off this buzzing in the back of his head. Everybody's buzzing. We're all buzzing. We're buzzing. Chapter 34 is a Debbie chapter. And she talks about how she loves gardening. She goes and asks Harley to hang out, which Harley says yes to. But on the way there, because she's going to Harley's house, on the way there, she swings by, like, Joe Dolan's house, and she sees that they're canceling the photo shoot, and there's Japanese beetles literally everywhere. Like, her garden's probably gonna be gone in, like, a day or two, and, like, the photo shoot is not happening. And Joe right away is like, it was you, Debbie. I know it was you. And she's like, no, I'm not, like, a beetle whisperer. It couldn't be me. And Joe's like, I know it was you. So, like, she's not good at these things. Everybody immediately is like, yeah, it's Debbie. Okay, girl, stop doing this shit. Everybody knows it's you immediately. Like, you're not sneaky. Like, you're not the genius you thought you were. I also, yeah, again, noted, weird lack of slow burn. I'm supposed to expect she was normal for decades and then gets to poisoning people left and right and killing in a day. She has poisoned, like, 3 separate groups of people over the course of 24 hours. And then includes probably killed someone. And then whatever the fuck she did in Coach Pike's house, which we don't know about yet. And it's like, I'm supposed to expect this woman was like totally normal for decades of her life. And then all of this has happened in 24 hours. That doesn't make any sense. Nothing about this book makes sense. It's like on the very, very surface, like an okay story, but the second you probe even a little bit, you realize that all of that crumbles almost immediately. So then we get like a weird stint of chapters right here. So chapter 35, still Debbie. It's just her going over to Harley's house, and when she's at Harley's house, she finds this t-shirt that she recognizes, and she recognizes the smell of it. And then the next chapter is like a Harley focused chapter, and it's essentially like she noticed that Debbie noticed the shirt, which is Cooper's. that she kind of peeped that it was familiar, that she smelled it, and then she like, they're sitting down to like eat the food, and Harley keeps asking her questions about Cooper, like probing more and more. And it's like obvious that Debbie is very uncomfortable and like doesn't want to answer these questions. Like this little back and forth. He's hopeless with any technology. He needs my help to turn on the computer. He sounds nice. You're lucky to be married to a nice guy. He's nice. Good father. Great father. Like, girl, why are you still asking her questions? You're gonna get, if you don't want to get caught, you're being really fucking dumb about it right now. Like, girl, what are we doing? Then we go to a Debbie chapter. Again, she points out the t-shirt. She recognizes it. She knows that smell. And then she, like, abruptly sidelines, and now we're on Ken. And she's like, well, I have my secrets, and nobody's ever going to hear from Ken again, and that's just what it is. And you're like, okay. She has cryptically, she says, although, like him, I have my secrets. There are things I never told him. There's one. One thing, by the way. Just one. But I never told anyone, because I never told anyone. And maybe that's part of the problem. I never gave myself to him 100%. So chapter 38, we get a Harley perspective, and she sees Cooper at the gym, and she kind of, not like confronts him, but she goes up to talk to him, and he's like clearly uncomfortable and keeps saying like, hey, we're not supposed to do this here. Like, we talked about this. Don't talk to me here. But she invites him to dinner. Tomorrow. Yep, the next day. That's what I thought. So she invites him to dinner the next day, and then he finally agrees to like come. And then he leaves. She has this little back and forth with her coworker, Cindy, where her coworker is just like, he's married, you shouldn't be messing around with him. And she's just kind of like, that's none of your business. The girl's like, I guess it's not. But then she kind of realizes like, ooh, there is someone who knows about this that like could tell people about this potentially, because Debbie also goes to this gym. So she just have a little moment of that about that. But then chapter 39, she gets home from work, and there's a car waiting for her on her street, which is weird because, like I said, she lives on like a dead-end street. There's not really anybody down there, and her neighbors are gone on like a trip for a little while, so they're not there either. And so the car actually ends up being her ex's sister, which we find out that essentially what happened, her ex was married. She inserted herself in the relationship because she thought her ex was rich. She broke them up. He got with her, and then she found out that all of the money was actually the wife's, and he wasn't really getting any of it. And then she dumped him, and he tried to go back to his wife, and his wife and kids like hate him now, so he couldn't really go back to them. And so he ends up hanging himself because she broke up with him and everything happened. But he didn't die. He's still alive. He's just like essentially kind of a vegetable now. And basically the ex's sister is like, I want you to visit him because this is your fault. And she literally maces the sister unprovoked. The sister is not going to attack her. The sister did not do anything aggressive, and she maces her for no reason. This bitch should have had the cops called on her, because what the fuck, actually? What is wrong with you? And she is, like, so heartless about it. Like, the sister was like, well, you could visit him. And she goes, you've got to be kidding me. I'm not doing that. I'm not going ever. I'm sorry, Edgar couldn't even manage to kill himself properly, but that's not my problem. There's no way I'm wasting even one more minute of my time on him. Which, like, I get it. Does Edgar sound like a good guy? No, he sounds like a loser. You can still have compassion that someone who's a loser tried to kill themselves and is now, like, in a horrible situation. Even if you don't want to visit, like, you could have made that point so much nicer. Like, you did not have to toe that line like that. Like, that was so far for no reason. And then to mace the poor girl after you said that, like, immediately. Oh my God. What is wrong with you? Chapter 40, we get another Dear Debbie drafts. Her husband doesn't like her cooking, so Debbie suggests that she put antifreeze into all of the cooking. Chapter 41 is a Cooper chapter, and he kind of goes and talks to Debbie. They're like about to have dinner, and he's kind of having this like, you know, weird moment where he's like feeling very iffy about like Debbie. And then his kids end up telling him that Coach Pike got arrested because they found a camera in like the girls' shower room. It wasn't like, it hadn't recorded any video. There was no actual like recording happening, but they found the camera that had been set up and the software that hooked like to the camera they found on Coach Pike's phone. So like clearly it seems to imply that he was going to like try to record these girls, you know what I mean? And then obviously gets, you know, arrested. Izzy gets back on the soccer team. Not that you cared, because Izzy's not interesting or important, or memorable. I keep forgetting she even exists. But she did get back on the soccer team, so that's cool. And Cooper has this moment where he's like, oh my god, wait a second. What if that was the address she was at? So he runs upstairs mid-dinner really awkwardly and very obviously, which if you're thinking your wife is like this awful person, like maybe you don't want to be so obvious that you're like suspecting the other, like he's acting weird. Okay, he's acting weird. So he runs upstairs, looks up Coach Pike's address, and finds that the address she was at is the same address that was Coach Pike's house. And now he's like, oh shit, she framed him for this. Like, that's a big deal. So chapter 42, we get a Debbie chapter. And it turns out that Lexi has broken up with Zane. They like break up, and then Debbie kind of goes in and like hears her like sobbing. So goes in to have like a conversation with her. And Lexi ends up admitting to her that Zane has a naked picture of her and that she broke up with him because he was like pressuring her to have sex and she didn't want to, and now he's threatening to send the picture around if she doesn't do it. Which, like, obviously fucking horrible. Zane's a loser, like I said. But Debbie, of course, she's like, I'm gonna solve this problem. I'm gonna make Zane go away. And oh, she also gets this, right before this happened, they also, this is kind of important, get a little snippet, like Cooper also like rushes off all suspiciously and fucking weird again, and because he gets a phone call and she hears like a little snippet of like a woman's voice as he like shuts the door behind him. And then, you know, she decides to ignore it because she's thinking about listening at the door. She decides to ignore it, has this whole conversation with Lexi because she hears Lexi crying. And so she, you know, she has the whole like, I'm gonna solve this problem, like, trust me, Lexi, like, I'm gonna solve this. And she ends the chapter with this. She says, I am seized by the sudden, almost irrepressible urge to tell her everything. I've never told anyone what happened to me. Not my parents, not Cooper, not anyone. I wish I could tell her, even though I know I can't. And I literally guessed, right at the top of the page, it says, my guess is that she killed a guy who assaulted her. And I'm not shitting you. The end of the next paragraph is literally, because I love her more, that's why I refuse to let anything happen to her, because I love her more than anything, and I want her life to be as good as mine promised to be before I was raped during my second year of college. So soon. And it, okay, I want to make something very clear here before we talk about, because the next chapter is Debbie's assault story. I want to make something abundantly clear here, because I'm going to make some criticisms, and I want to make it very clear before I do so that nothing about what happened to Debbie is okay. Nothing about the sexual assault that happens during Greek life is okay. And I say that as someone who was in Greek life in college. And Debbie didn't deserve a second of that. Nobody deserves ever to be sexually assaulted. All of that is horrible. And it is very reasonable that a serious traumatic event like that would derail your future. It is not surprising that she started flunking out of classes, that she had trouble going places, talking to people, that she struggled with this. This is a very valid reason to struggle. and to, you know, have derailed some of your plans for and stuff like that. So I'm not criticizing what happened to her or her reactions to it. My criticism, well, you'll see as they get brought up, but like, I just want to make that abundantly clear that like, this is a traumatic situation. I'm not criticizing any point of that, and it is perfectly reasonable that Debbie left this situation feeling traumatized. Okay, now I'm gonna start my criticisms. So, right at the beginning, this is a story I've never told before. Don't worry, there won't be any graphic details. Which, like, you literally just told me you got raped. So, yeah, I don't want the graphic details of that. Please, God, as someone who has also experienced it, I don't want any graphic details about that ever in any book. Even if, for some reason, you know, I can say that the sexual assault's necessary to the story, which it very rarely ever is, but once in a great while it can be, you still don't need to describe it in great detail. And what bothers me is that she specifically says there won't be any graphic details, and I'm not shitting you, on literally like the next 2 pages, she, look at this whole chapter, this is like the longest chapter in the book, and it goes into graphic detail. Every single step of every single thing that happened to her, down to the literal amount of like minutes and seconds it took for like the event to happen. She literally starts it out with saying, the truth is I don't remember much, which is part of why I never went to the police, although there are a lot of reasons I kept it to myself. It doesn't mean I'm lying. Which, problematic, because first of all, girl, why would I think you're lying? I don't think you're lying. Why would I think you were lying about that? This is such a weird, because like now I kind of think you're lying about it, because you had to say that you weren't lying about it. Why would I think you were lying about getting sexually assaulted in college? Like, why? That doesn't really make a lot of sense, but okay. And then you tell me that you don't remember it. You don't remember much. That would be reasonable. And given the scenario, which I'll explain in just a second, it would make sense. But then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages, longest chapter in this fucking book, in graphic detail about every second of everything that happened, from the moment you got invited to the party till the moment everything was done and you like got back home. You told me in graphic detail over 10 pages why and how that happened. And that wouldn't piss me off nearly so much if you hadn't put in the sentence that there wouldn't be any graphic details. I was expecting this to be another like 2-3 page chapter. Don't say that if you don't mean it. That actually really bothered me. So basically the story is, I'm not going to go into graphic detail. Story is, she went to a party, she met a dude, she got roofied. That's what happened. So like I said, reasonable that she wouldn't remember large chunks of that. However, she remembers every single second of that. Actually, like I said, even down to the graphically, like, how long it took. Yeah, she, you know, quits out of school, leaves, drops out, never tells Cooper, never tells anybody. And then, of course, she ends the chapter with a threat towards this guy, saying that, you know, anything I do to him is going to be so much worse than what he did to me. Which, again, you went decades without addressing this, and now it's just, now we're going to kill, it's so fast. It's been 24 hours. Okay, so chapter 44 is another Debbie chapter. She sneaks out again at night. She steals Lexi's phone beforehand, and she texts Zane and tells her to meet him, or tells him to meet her at like this local like playground that's like by a shipyard that's like kind of not a lot of people go to it, and not in like the middle of the night. So there were like layers of this being problematic to me. I understand you want to do something to Zane. Do I have issues with that, seeing as he's like an 18-year-old kid and you're like 50 fucking 5? Yeah, I do. But even that, like, I could look aside. But she gets Lexi's phone, whatever, punches in the things, and she literally says, "For a moment, I'm tempted to look through her photos to try to find the pictures she was telling me about, and then I decide not to." girl, what? Why would you willingly be trying to find child pornography of your own daughter? Like, we'll get into it a little bit, but like, okay, if you had Zane's phone, yes, find those pictures, delete those fucking pictures, get them the fuck out of there. Why on her phone would you want to try to find those pictures? Because then you're just looking up CP to try to look up CP. You're not looking up CP to try to like save your daughter and get it off of this guy's phone. Like, you're just looking at it just to look at it. That's weird. That's fucking weird. I literally wrote, ew, why? That's weird behavior. So she texts Zane. Zane is gonna meet her at this playground. She gets to the playground first, and she takes this beer and she opens it and she spikes it. And then she puts that spiked beer on like a bench at the playground, trying to get Zane to drink it, which works somehow. Which, like, I get, dumb teenage boy, alcohol. I don't even know most people in that scenario who are gonna pick up like a beer that's clearly been like drank out of and then drink it. But he does. And guess what's in it? Guess what's in it? If you guessed opium, ding 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 ding, you would be correct. It is opium. We put opium in the drink. We're just spiking fucking 18-year-olds with opium. And so he drinks it. He passes out. She unlocks his phone and she deletes the conversation that him and her had about coming to the playground, which, like, smart. I get that. However, phone records exist. Like, this issue is clearly going to go to the police. The police could figure that out very fast and frame Lexi for this that you're about to do. Like, girl, phone records! So she deletes the photos of Lexi, which, like I said, that valid. Do that. That I'm not mad at. That makes sense. But then she's like, okay, but I know Lexi had told her that he had done this to a girl at his old school, which was one of the reasons that he like switched schools. So she goes and tries to find that girl's information. And when she does, she takes that and she sends it to the school and to the police saying like, hey, you know, from like an anonymous email basically saying like, hey, this guy has CP on his phone, because this girl was like 14, 15. And so, you know, she sends this off to the police. End chapter. So when she gets home, she runs into Cooper, who is awake, and he has drunk the rest of the 6-pack of beers that she brought, like the one so she could spike it, which you can just buy one tall boy, but all right. He drank the rest of the 6-pack or whatever, and he's like a little drunk, and he knows that she's been driving because he heard her come in from the garage, and he knows that she was at the shipyard because she didn't turn off her location, and he looked, and so he tries to confront her about this and ask her why she's at the shipyard, and she basically was like, well, why were you gone for 2 hours last night? Why was I at the shipyard? Why were you gone for 2 hours? And he doesn't want to admit that, which is funny because he literally just like a couple of chapters ago was like, I'm gonna come clean. He said it like 3 separate times, and when she goes, where were you? He goes, oh, I told you I was over for a drive. And then she just goes, okay, I'm tired, I'm going to bed. And then she sleeps upstairs and he sleeps downstairs. Okay, good job, Cooper. Good job, Coop. So the next chapter is another Dear Debbie draft about someone who thinks that their husband might be cheating on them. And she suggests, you know, you should look to see if he has an alternate phone or if he might have an alternate like email address. You might want to hire a private investigator. And then she ends the note by also suggesting that the woman could hire a hitman. Of course. So chapter 48 is a Debbie chapter. And she, you know, goes down, wakes up Cooper. You know, they're kind of getting their morning started. And then the doorbell rings and it's Zane. And Zane originally is like, Lexi blocked me, she's a bitch, she's this, she's that. But then Debbie kind of like, she doesn't tell him like, hey, I know that you're like a sex offender or anything like that, but she just like kind of starts telling him what happens to sex offenders in prison, which was honestly, this was one of the only times I liked Debbie, where she kind of is like, she's like telling him all the stuff that like happens to like sex offenders in prison, and like why you don't want to go to prison for sex offending, especially of a small child. And he's like obviously kind of freaked out, and you know he ends up leaving, and he's just tell Lexi I like can't drive her to school anymore, and like leaves. Lexi doesn't know this happened. Nobody knows this conversation happened. Debbie is the only one who like witnesses this conversation. So chapter 49 is a Cooper chapter. He's having this whole thing where he's like, I know Debbie went to the shipyard. I don't know why she went to the shipyard. Debbie's doing all these things, blah, blah, blah. And then he literally says, part of me wanted to confront her in the morning, but instead I end up avoiding her. Yeah, we know. You have not stood up for yourself one time, or like pursued. You think your wife is killing people, and you can't even sit her down and like ask her a fucking question. Like, Coop annoys me. If you can't tell, Cooper is irritating. He's so passive. Like, he could literally do anything, and he's just like, why are all these bad things happening? I don't know. Maybe because you're not doing anything to stop it. Like, do something. God. So Cooper goes to work, and he finds out that there's a lot of missing money from like the work account. Like the corporate account is missing a large chunk of money. And so it's starting to be extra weird. You know, his boss is missing on this impromptu fishing trip. He's not answering his phone, and now all of this money is like missing out of the account. And the next chapter we flip over back to Debbie. So Debbie is just talking about how she wants to start this app, because sometimes she just like makes apps. They like, there's this whole image of Debbie like through this where she tries to act like, I'm just the smartest person that's ever existed. Like, oh, it's such a shame I didn't make it through college because I'm the smartest person who ever existed. But like, everyone else not only directly refers to Debbie as being kind of dumb, but like everybody else treats her like she's so dumb, and like all of her thinking is so surface level and so lacking in critical thinking that like I don't believe you when you tell me she's smart. And every time you tell me she's like making apps and stuff, it's jarring, because I'm like, this woman is not like, you're not, the image that you're trying to sell me of what Debbie is and the image you're actually portraying of what Debbie is do not line up. And anytime it gets mentioned, it's very jarring, because I'm just like, what are you talking about? But now she wants to make this app called Punish Your Husband. Doesn't really say what it's about, but that'll be important later. So she wants to make this app called Punish Your Husband. And then Izzy calls her and says that she needs to get picked up from school, like ASAP, like it's an emergency, because a drunk senior crashed his car into the side of the building, and he's like in bad condition. Which, can we guess? Can we guess who that might be? Who was just at her house? If you guys sane, good job. Debbie goes and picks up the kids from school. It's, you know, a mess. There's a bunch of cars. Everybody's outside at this point because they're kind of like evacuating them. It's just kind of like a big fire drill, but even worse. And so she gets the kids, she picks them up, and Lexi is like inconsolable on the way home. She is very upset. At one point she literally says, "Why am I crying? My boyfriend has a broken neck." Not your boyfriend. Girl, what? First of all, not your boyfriend. Let's just make that clear. And Debbie is just like, what? This guy was so bad, and you're sad? Why would you be upset? Which, like, don't get me wrong, I am not in Lexi's corner. That man is not your boyfriend. Stay the fuck away from him. But at the same time, that was your boyfriend like 2 days ago. And this was a very, like, obviously, just because I maybe don't want to be with him doesn't mean I want him to crash headfirst through a fucking school and die, or, like, be severely maimed for the rest of his life. And Debbie just does not get this. She's like, but I fixed the problem. But I fixed the problem. Girl, you made another problem. And now a kid is maimed for life, probably. Like, so we get another chapter of just Lexi crying, her not understanding it, her trying to look for news, but not really finding anything. So she decides to head out. And this happens a lot. There's a reason I say that they are not great parents. Like, there are so many occasions, especially just in this last little part of the book, but it happens quite a bit in the beginning too, where, like, bad things will be happening and their kids are, like, stressed out or scared or emotional, and then they just dip. They say, okay, anyways, I'm gonna head out. Every 5 fucking... There's a time where Cooper does it, like, 6 times, and you're like, okay. I mean, like, they're a little bit older of children. They're, like, 13 and 17 or something around that. So, like, it makes a little more sense. But it's just, like, they clearly need you and, like, are emotionally, like, not feeling great. And every 5 seconds you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna leave, though. Okay, bye. Okay, have fun with that by yourself. Okay, I'm gonna leave now, though. So she gets in her fucking car and she drives over an hour away. She drives all the way back to MIT. And she goes to this frat house where this all happened, knocks on the door, a kid answers, and she pretends to be a reporter who, like, wants to, like, interview, like, a fraternity and stuff, and was, like, doing a story on fraternities, so he lets her in. And I will say the only part of this chapter that I liked was there was this one kind of offhand thing. She says, I've gotten so good at pretending that the night that ruined my life never happened. But over the last year, I can't stop thinking about it. It's become an obsession for me. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Why did it take till chapter 235 for you to make an acknowledgement of, like, because, like I said, like, there's all this, like, Cooper keeps saying, like, oh, man, she's been acting weird for, like, at least 6 months. She's been acting weird, which also, again, doesn't make that much sense, because if you've been obsessing about this for the last year, wouldn't it be the last year you've been, like, acting off? Not just the last 6 months you've been acting off, if you feel like you've been losing your mind this whole time. But I digress. Like, we get all this, like, Cooper says she's acting weird and stuff, but, like, we don't get any of that from Debbie's perspective. Like, nothing about what she's doing seems weird or off. Like, she's acting like everything about her life is, like, completely normal. So it's like, you don't really know who to believe. You're not really sure exactly, like, what they're even talking about. So I was glad that we at least got this one acknowledgement of, like, hey, yeah, here's a time frame of where, like, I was doing pretty okay about this for a long time, and, like, weirdly now, like, this chunk of time, this has been really hard for me. And that's reasonable, because I've had that happen to me too, where, like, something that didn't bother me for quite a long time randomly resurface, and then I kind of am constantly, like, thinking about it, and it's, like, really bothering me, like, where it didn't really bother me before. That's reasonable. Why did I have to wait till page 235 to get that, though? Like, you didn't have to tell me about her assault story or anything to give me that. Like, you could have given me hints of that before you told me even, like, what happened to her. Like, so the next chapter is a Cooper chapter, and he gets a call from Lexi, and she's like, hey, like, she never calls him. She always, like, calls Debbie, and she's like, hey, can you come home, like, right now? Like, I found some weird stuff on Mom's computer, and I need you to come home, like, right now. And he's kind of like, they have this back and forth conversation where Lexi admits that, like, her and Izzy have noticed that Debbie's been weird for a while. They think that she did that to Coach Pike. Like, they think she's doing these things. Like, even her kids know that she is doing these things. She is not good at this. And then I guess, like, they were already feeling like this, and then Lexi went to go use her computer and saw something concerning. So Cooper speeds home, and what Lexi found that ends up being concerning was it was like the drafts folder. Like they found all the Dear Debbie drafts that have been like scattered throughout, and obviously like they were concerned because they all end in murder pretty much across the board. Like the example they give is, you know, this lady who likes to knit, but her husband won't wear anything that she's made, and Debbie suggests that she makes him a scarf and then she strangles him to death with it. And he also admits here where I was like, again, thank you. Why did I have to wait till chapter 244 to get this information? But he also points out that he doesn't read her column all the time, but he has read it in the past and it was totally normal. Which I was like, thank you. Because this whole time I've been like, how has this not been concerning to anybody? Like what, again, like I said, I did miss the drafts part for the beginning part, so that was kind of on me. But still, it was just like, these are so just out of context, and they never give us like a regular article to show that these things are like developing over time. They kind of just like, those are the only drafts they ever give us. So it's like all we know is about her being murdery, and it makes it hard to almost just like imagine her just doing her job regularly. We're like, well, how did she get published for so long? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So it was nice to get finally a recognition of like her articles used to be normal. Like, she's writing weird ones now, but she's written plenty of like completely normal ones, which I feel like was not clear throughout this at all. And so the daughter suggests that he look at her previous locations. So he thought he could only look at like her current location. So he goes and looks, and there's only 2 locations that he doesn't recognize. And they don't tell us what they are. There's 2 locations that he doesn't recognize, but clearly he recognizes, well, he doesn't like recognize them from her normal places, but he does recognize one of the addresses. And so he's like, oh, this is bad. I need to go right now. So he gets in the car and he speeds off. So chapter 56, we're back with Debbie, and she is in the frat house with this boy whose name's Lennox. Love that. And he's giving her kind of just a general tour through the house. Like, he shows her the basement, he shows her the top floor, he shows her some of the rooms. She starts to have a panic attack, understandably so, because she's back in the same environment and like the same rooms and stuff. And he like worries about her. He's like, are you okay? And she's like, no, like, let's keep going, I'm just feeling a little lightheaded. And she ends up strategically leaving her purse in the room, so when she comes back, she can take the fire starting stuff that she brought with her and burn the entire house down. This is like older woman. She has multiple like almost grown kids. Like, it has been decades since this event happened. And I get it. I get not thinking reasonably about that. I get wanting to do something to the guy who did it. What the fuck does the house have to do with anything? I get that it's like a symbol, you know what I mean, to her, of like a symbol of this thing happening. Like, it's where the event happened. But no one lives there now. Like, why is it the house's fault? Like, why would you risk killing these teen boys and having them lose like all of their belongings and their homework and their computers, and they're like in college, like, just because you don't like that something bad happened there decades ago? Like, you couldn't do it in the summer or something when like the students aren't even in the house and like there's nobody really even in there. Like, the logic here, I get it. The point is, like, Debbie is not logical. She's not necessarily thinking rationally. But the jump here was so weird and abrupt. And I feel like, and, you know, speaking to someone who's experienced that, like, you know, I'm not saying my experience is what everybody experiences by far. You know, like, I just can't imagine, like, wanting to take it out on, like, the house. Especially in that way, to the way where it's, like, putting innocent people in the path of like death and harm and like really fucking up their entire lives just because I'm mad that this, like, be mad at the person who did it. Why are we mad at the house? That doesn't make any fucking sense. But I get it. It's not supposed to make sense. It's fine. I just think this is kind of a weak argument, kind of a weak plot point, but this one I'll concede to you on. So chapter 57, we get a Cooper chapter, and he is real concerned because we find out one of the places that Debbie went, of those two places, was Ken's house. And he used to like water Ken's plants for him when he would go out, though he asked Jesse to this time. And which is why he was like, you know, like concerned. Not only, okay, is my boss not like reaching out to me and doesn't want me to take care of this anymore, but he's like, I know that house. I've been there. So he rushes over there. He looks around the first floor and he doesn't really find anything, except for he finds Ken's phone. And he's like, well, that's really weird. Most people wouldn't just leave for a fishing trip without bringing their phone. And obviously it's got like a bunch of missed messages and stuff. Like he has not been here. So Cooper decides to check out the second floor. We then skip back to Debbie. And she is talking about how she's never, for all of the things that she's done and all of the terrible things she's wanted to do, she's never wanted to commit arson before. This is a first for her. And she's like, I don't want anyone to get hurt. Like, part of me feels like the boys at this fraternity deserve whatever is coming to them, but I don't know that for sure. Girl, it's been decades, dude. Decades. Like, I get it. I get not liking frat dudes. I'm not telling you to like frat bros. Let me fucking tell you. That's not the message I'm trying to send here. But acting like all of these random guys who are decades away from this event happening, that have no idea this event has happened, all that deserve to die. And like, she's ignoring the fact that it's not just them dying. Like, yes, that is a high chance. There is a chance that they could die. But also, even if they don't die, they lost their place to live. They lost all of their belongings, including probably things that were really important to them. They've probably lost their computers, their homework. Like, no one's saying that they were necessarily in class and brought all of their work with them. You know, most people have a lot of work spread out over different things, or they could just be out at lunch and leave their laptop at home. Like, you are ruining people's lives. And you say, I don't want to kill someone innocent. Okay, but you want to ruin innocent people's lives? Like, the logic here is not logicking. And she explains that she has like cigarettes and matches and stuff like in her purse, and she plans to like put a lit cigarette on like a bed or something, or a desk or something, and so it starts this fire. But as she goes to be like, hey, I need to go back and get my purse, she sees this sign and it says, you know, don't leave your drinks unattended. And this sign leads to a conversation between her and Lennox, where he very vehemently explains, very passionately, that they are super anti like sexual assault. They are super into safety. They block off all of the upper rooms. Nobody can get into any rooms at all. They make all of the party goers stay just in the basement, and they have people like posted up to be monitoring the party at all times and making sure everybody is in one place that can be monitored at all times. They don't allow girls to drink from open drinks at all. They are only allowed to drink from bottles and cans that they like are unopened when they get them. Like, they have all of these policies in hand, and they're like he's very like, if we ever caught something like that happening, like that brother would be out immediately. Like, you know, their behavior reflects on all of us. Like, we would never tolerate that. Like, that guy would be gone. And she kind of has this moment where she's like, okay, well, he sounds like pretty genuine. But also then she immediately puts on him that she's like, well, but if they think that behavior would reflect badly on them, then they would cover that up. They would just cover that up, because they would be, or they would do exactly what he just said and kick that guy out and make it clear, like, hey, we didn't know this guy was like that. We do not associate with that. We do not like that. Like, they don't have to automatically cover it up. just because something bad. Is that possible? Yes, that is a possibility. I'm not saying that it's not something reasonable to like worry about, but she like basically just puts that on them. Like that is what they would do. And you're like, well, that's not, doesn't really seem like what they would do. Actually, like kind of seems like he's making it pretty clear that that's not what they would do. But again, grown woman, literal child that she's speaking to. Maybe he's legal to drink. Maybe. You know. And she's talking about murdering him. He's in the house. She was about to set the house on fire. He's in the house. You didn't care about that kid. Like, it's just, like I said, I have no criticisms of the event happening or that this would affect her or that this would derail her life. But girl, what are we doing? I understand feminine rage and misguided feminine rage even. But this just feels so misguided that it's just jarring. Like, we have not had any hints of like sexual assault through like the majority of the book, and then you just drop this story on us out of nowhere of like, oh, by the way, she got sexually assaulted, and that's the reason like all of this happened. And you're like, okay, seems kind of random, but all right, sure, yeah, that makes sense. You know, college party, okay, sure, yeah, okay, I get that. And then you're like, okay, but then she ignored it for decades. And all of a sudden, like, all of this is happening now. All of a sudden, and it's been 48 hours, maybe. So it's been like 48 hours since all of this has happened. Where it's just like, this was fine for decades, and now in less than 48 hours, she's gonna kill all these innocent people and like burn this house. Like, the jump is just jarring. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense, even for someone misguided. Like, you're not really showing me her logic to get there in a way that makes sense, because her logic is so illogical. This is a character who is so fundamentally unlikable. I just don't even want to read about her. I want her to be in jail. Like, I want her to be in prison. Like, she's a bad person. I don't like her. So chapter 59. It's a Cooper episode. He goes up to the second floor, and I had one of my biggest criticisms about this entire book, which has been a repeated criticism, but it's really, really perfectly emulated by this moment. Cooper goes upstairs. There's a hall. There's a couple of different rooms. He checks the rooms to the side first. There's nothing in them. Nothing weird. And then he goes into the final room, and he finds Ken's dead body. Ken's been shot through the forehead, yep. And he's lying dead on his bed. This is a moment that should be rife with tension, suspense, anticipation. I know the dead body is there, but Cooper doesn't know the dead body is there. And this moment of like, you know, Cooper is like creeping closer and closer to the dead body, and you're like, is he gonna find it? What did she even do to Ken? Like, what is he gonna find? It should be this moment where I'm like, oh my god, like, is he gonna find a dead body? What is the dead body gonna be like? What is it? None of that. I literally breezed through this entire chapter, got halfway through the next chapter, and then went, wait a second, what just happened? And then backed up and had to read this chapter again, because it was so uninterestingly portrayed, the way that he like goes through this and finds the dead body, that my brain didn't even process that he like had found the dead body, and like now we knew what happened to Ken and stuff, because like we didn't really know that yet. I literally didn't even process that had happened, because it was told so uninterestingly, and I had to literally go back and be like, oh wait, okay, all right, yeah, I guess she just shot him through the forehead, okay. But Cooper does note that like, because his first thought is that like Debbie went over to the house to confront Ken about, you know, him firing Cooper. They had a heated back and forth. She pulls out the gun. It happens. But he realizes he's on the top floor. He's in bed. This looks very organized. Like, this is methodical. This looks like it was planned out. This does not look like a crime of passion. And he kind of realizes, if this was Debbie, that's a problem. Because I can't even excuse this of just like, oh, she really loved me. She was feeling really passionate. Like, she planned this. And this was very methodical. So, like, if Debbie did this, like, this is a problem. And so Cooper rushes out. But then realizes, and I have a huge gripe about this. This was a big plot point for me. So Cooper runs out of the house. And when he runs out of the house, he acknowledges that there is a camera at the door, and that the camera, he remembers it because he like has watered the plants at this house quite a lot, and he realizes he's gonna be on the camera, and he's like, oh fuck, when the cops find this dead body, I'm going to be on the camera as having showed up to this house in this period of when this person was dead. We're gonna get more into that later, but I just want to remember, Cooper is on that camera. Spoiler alert, Debbie's not. Debbie went in and she deleted herself off of it before she left, which, like, that makes sense. Debbie's good with computers. Debbie was planning this, so she had the forethought, you know, to delete herself off of the camera. Cooper is not deleted off of the camera. Debbie does not know that Cooper went to the house. Debbie does not know that Cooper is on the camera. Okay, I think I made that clear to you, but that's important, I promise. So Debbie leaves the frat house. She gets a bunch of messages, dozens of phone calls and texts from Cooper. She's not answering any of them. And the last one from him is in all caps. It says, Debbie, please call me. I'm so sorry for everything. And she's like, it's a little late for that, isn't it? But fine. He's so sorry. I'll deal with him soon enough. Kind of implying she's going to do something terrible to Cooper. And that was honestly the only person I ever found myself concerned at for any point was Cooper. Because I'm like, this man is going to get his shit fucked up. Like, I really thought this was going to end with, like, her coming after Cooper. Like, kind of the end of her feminine rage. And this kind of implies it. And so she's thinking about how she's going to do something to Cooper. She gets a phone call from Harley. And Harley invites her over to dinner that night. Remember, she also invited Coop. She invited both of them at the same time. Because Harley is planning to surprise them and tell Debbie. She planned them both at the same time. We'll get into that later, but she did. And so she has this kind of like redirect where she's like, Cooper doesn't exist anymore. Harley's a bad person. I should do something about Harley. So she decides to head over to Harley's house. But then at the end of this chapter, right? So we're kind of in this moment where you're like, okay, shit. Like, maybe something's going to happen to Cooper. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Oh my God, now something's going to happen to Harley. Like, oh shit. And you have finally a little bit of tension, a little bit of like, oh my God, you know, what's going to happen? And then she literally ruins all of it. Because the final paragraph of this chapter, she just lays out everything she did and everything she's going to do. Very clearly. She literally is like, you know, I glanced at the glove compartment of the car, which contains the gun I've been carrying around from the last couple days for when I took it from its hiding place. Whenever I touch it, I put on a pair of leather gloves, careful to keep my fingerprints from rubbing off on it, and careful to preserve the prints that are already on it. Tonight will be the last time I use the gun. The next time someone picks it up, this will be evidence. First of all, you can tell that Frieda thinks this is Gone Girl. This is not Gone Girl. I didn't even like Gone Girl, and at least Gone Girl was well written. This is not your Gone Girl moment. It's not. And also, this was the only thing I didn't know. Like, obviously I assumed it's Coop's gun. I didn't know she was wearing, well, I think she does mention she's wearing gloves for Ken, but that makes sense. But it's like, you know, there's this mystery where you, like, don't know exactly what she's been doing or exactly what she's going to do. And, well, you do know exactly what she's been doing, but you don't know exactly what she's going to do. And they just ruin it. It just, you take all the wind out of the sails when you just directly tell me, hey, yeah, so I've had this is how I used it, this is where I'm gonna put it, right now I'm using it for this, but then I'm gonna use it for evidence. Like, you just gave up all the ghost. Why would I even want to keep reading? You just told me. Like, I don't know, it just really was like abrupt, and like a chapter that was actually really setting up the tension, because she's having this like really casual conversation with Harley, and Harley's all like chill and stuff, and you're just like, oh my god, she's gonna go kill that girl or do something crazy, and that girl doesn't know, and then you just ruin it by just being like, oh yeah, but by the way. So next chapter, we fast forward back to Coop. He's like, I've got to get the fuck out of here. I did skip a little bit. This is the chapter where he says the stuff about the door cam and realizing that he's on the door cam, but it's important, so we'll mention it twice. And then we go to a Harley chapter, and this is a chapter, like I said, where she was like, I don't want to be hiding this anymore. Like, I'm inviting them both to dinner so that this can be over and I can be with Cooper. Like, Cooper's gonna pick you in that circumstance anyways, but this is Harley's plan. She is significant, like, set them both up to come at the same time for a reason. I will say, though, that by the time she got to inviting Debbie over for dinner, I had completely forgotten that she had invited Cooper over. Like, it was so uninteresting and so, like, barely even noted, like, kind of just moved along, and these characters are so forgettable that I had completely forgotten she had even invited Cooper. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, all right, this is her plan. And so we go over to Cooper, and he's like, he wants to go home and immediately check for his gun. But he's like, no, I have to be a dad. I have to check on my daughters first. Like, you haven't abandoned them every 5 minutes. Like, he came home, all this, and then he just left without warning. Didn't tell them where he was going. Didn't tell them he was checking out one of the addresses that was on that list. He just dipped when they were, like, clearly very distraught. Comes back, they're still clearly distraught, still clearly having a hard time with this, and he's just like, okay, well, I haven't talked to mom, I'm just gonna go to the garage, and then finds that his gun is gone, and then he kind of has this moment where he realizes, like, oh fuck, I think Debbie's gonna set me up for his murder, because, like, Ken mysteriously goes missing, and, they get into a big fight, and then he quits in a fit of anger, and then Ken mysteriously goes missing, and there's a lot of money missing from, like, the corporate account, and he's shot in the head with Cooper's gun. Like, she's like, oh my god, like, Debbie's framing me for murder. And then he decides to get in his car and fucking leave again. When Izzy is like, hey, I'm upset, is mom gonna be okay? And he's like, yeah, I don't know, man, she's probably gonna be fine. I'm gonna leave, though. You've been here for 3 minutes. Like, your daughters have confided to you multiple times that they are very distraught and, like, need you to be there for them, and you just keep leaving every 5 seconds. Like, they cannot stop leaving this fucking house. Jesus. So, chapter 64 is a Harley chapter. And Debbie shows up right at 6 o'clock. Debbie's acting a little weird. Like, their hug is kind of awkward. And Debbie, like, will not set down her purse. She's just, like, holding on to it. Which, like, not obvious at all, Debbie. Not suspicious at all. But yeah, Harley starts to tell Debbie that, I've actually had this boyfriend, like, I invited him, I want you to meet him, like, he's been really great, he says he really loves me. Debbie's like, that's cool, I guess, sure. And she's trying to, like, drop hints of, like, hey, this is your man. Like, she said, yeah, he's an accountant, just like Cooper, like, just, like, trying to be very obvious that she's like, hey, I'm fucking your husband, by the way. And she even admits to Debbie, like, he's married, he's not separated, like, he's actively married. And she's starting to get, like, this sense as she's, like, telling Debbie, and the way Debbie's reacting, that she's like, maybe this was, like, not the best idea you ever had. Which, like, girl, yeah! Yeah, I don't know what part of you would ever at any point think this was a good idea. And I can tell you don't have friends, because anybody you told that to would be like, that's a terrible fucking idea. Do not do that. Like, you're gonna get yourself murdered. Do not do that. So he comes in, or, you know, there's a knock at the door, interrupts their conversation. Harley goes to answer it and it's all like, hi, Cooper, in like her sexiest voice. Plot twist though, it's not Cooper. Cooper is not the one at the door. The one at the door is actually Jesse, his bestie from work that he's talked to like twice in this entire book. Literally up until this point, I hadn't even named him because he was so insignificant to the story. Like, none of my notes have his name because he was just so unimportant. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more, so maybe I shouldn't even get into it yet. But this was so frustrating because it's like, okay, I'm fine with a plot. I love a plot twist, actually. Like, I don't love a predictable book. I love a plot twist. And I was like, kind of like, okay, cool. It's not Cooper. All right. Hell yeah. Like, I was actually kind of happy it wasn't Cooper. Except for the fact that, like, it makes a lot of the rest of the book not really make that much sense. Because I get it. Like, you're trying to put a fast one over on us. And, you know, you were trying to, like, red herring us and lead us astray through the whole book to, like, get to this plot twist. Awesome. But a plot twist is not a lie. You know? Like a plot twist should be, like, subverting your expectations of what you thought was gonna happen. Not just, I've abruptly changed everything about the story and now, like, this random guy is in it. Like, the jump, like, I don't know, the plot twist didn't do what I wanted it to do for me. Like, I had less of a moment of like, oh, holy shit, that's not Cooper, oh my god, and had more of a like, wait, so like half this fucking book doesn't even make sense anymore. Like, what are we talking about? What? And that's not really how I feel like I should feel with your plot twist. Like, I feel like I should be excited by it, where I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe that's what's happening. I shouldn't be like, oh my god, that's what's happening? That doesn't make any fucking, what are we talking about? Like, I don't feel like that should be my gut reaction to your plot twist. But maybe, that one I will attest, like, that one could just be me. I don't think that was the best way that could have been handled. Or, like, I feel like there was better ways that could have been hinted at throughout the course of the thing, rather than taking this character that I legitimately had forgotten his fucking name, because he's had 2 conversations and neither of them were important and neither of them lasted more than half of a page. That it's like, the fact that, like, now this guy is the center of the whole story doesn't make any sense. We've had 4 lines of dialogue from this character, none of which were interesting or that illuminating or that big of a deal. And now he's, like, the main focus of the story, and he is going to be the main focus for the rest of the book. And it just felt so abrupt and out of nowhere for a character. Like I said, I had quite literally forgotten what his name even was, because he was so, like, he wasn't adding anything to the story at all. Like, you could have written all of his parts out completely and the story would have been completely seamless. Like, it would not have made any less sense. So for that person to be the person that your entire plot twist and, like, the entire end of the book focuses on just felt so jarring and, like, unsatisfying. Because also, too, like, why are you essentially introducing a new character in the last 4 chapters of the book? Like, how am I supposed to get emotionally invested in this character or care about what this character's doing or its interactions or any of that when I'm not getting this information till 30 pages before the book ends? I feel like this was handled poorly. I don't think this was a good plot twist. So we go back to Debbie. Or not back to Debbie. We go back to Cooper. And Cooper is trying to find Debbie. And this chapter also was one of those chapters where I was like, what are we talking about? Because we find out that Cooper is not having an affair. It turns out that Cooper is a severe alcoholic, and the woman that he's been sneakily talking to is his sponsor, and he's been sneaking out to go to AA meetings. None of this makes fucking sense. At no point in this book has drinking been brought up. At no point in this book has Cooper even had a thought about drinking or like hinted at any of this, or even hinted at using substances to solve problems, even in the past. Like, nothing about this is hinted at. There's only like really two other places that drinking is mentioned. At the beginning, she mentions that they keep like one bottle of wine in the house for company, and she goes to check it and it like has water in it or whatever. She assumes like Lexi stole it or something, or Zayn stole it, I think is actually what she thinks. And it's kind of like an offhand moment, like barely mentioned. And then there is when she gets home and like Cooper has drank the beers. Which, like, I get it. The whole point is, like, he's like, oh, I haven't told her. This is, a big problem. Like, I should have told her when we were together, when we first got together, but I didn't want her to, like, break up with me. And, like, I get that. I'm not saying I don't understand that, because that does make perfect sense to me. But, like, you're telling me you guys have been married for decades. You've fallen off the wagon multiple times. This is, like, the 4th time you say, and, like, nothing has ever been suspected. Nothing. She's never caught you. Like, this is never, like, you've been going off on benders and she didn't catch you. Like, she caught you. You were gone for 2 hours, and she was like, where the fuck were you? What was going on? So it's like, I refuse to believe that she has never caught wind of this through the decades that they've been together. And then on top of that, like, there's nothing hinted at, like, when that whole thing happens and Debbie comes home and he's drunk. Like, she has no concerns about him drinking. She's just kind of like, yeah, if that happened to me, I probably would have got drunk too. Like, she doesn't question it. She has, like, there's nothing, not even a hint of a thought in her mind. And it's like, okay, either Debbie is the most selfish character ever, which, yeah, and you just care so little about your husband and you've paid so little attention that even these, like, very drastic things of him, like, disappearing for days at a time, you just didn't note it. Like, I just refuse to believe that he is hidden this for this long, that he's this severe of an alcoholic, he's fallen off the wagon this many times, and like she doesn't even have a whiff of a hint of suspicion, like not even a half a second of hesitation. That doesn't make any sense. That's not realistic. Like, is it realistic for your partner to have been with you for a long time and to have like kept a secret from you, or to have a part of their personality that maybe you didn't necessarily realize was a thing right away? Yes. Decades of not knowing your partner is a severe alcoholic when they've fallen off the wagon several times and not even have a hint of suspicion, like, that doesn't make any sense. That's not reasonable. It doesn't even read as a plot twist, because you're just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about? This is another problematic chapter. I can't even lie to you. So, chapter 66, we go back to Debbie. Debbie's, still in Harley's house. Harley is very confused, very shocked. She just found out that she thought she's been fucking this woman's husband the whole time. That's not who that is, because he does admit, like, yeah, I lied. I used Cooper's name because I know he doesn't have social media, so, like, people aren't going to be able to, like, check on it. It's clearly not the first time that he's, like, done this. Obviously, Harley's upset. Harley breaks up with him. But as she's, like, breaking up with him, he's like, hold on, sorry, I gotta sit down. And then he, like, passes out on her couch, just unconscious. Which, are we surprised? Debbie laced his shit with opium. They act like opium is just, like, a thing you can just get easily and just, like, manufacture easily at home with nobody noticing. But yeah, she drugs this man with opium. Sure, whatever. So he passes out. Her and Harley are having like a little bit of a tiff, and then she shoots Harley right in the head. Harley dies. Again, didn't really care that much, but like, I don't know how you're telling me this argument back and forth, like this moment of such high tension where she's like, is she gonna kill Harley? Like, what's gonna happen? And I just still don't really care when a character drops dead. Not good writing. But, you know, Harley's dead. And this is where we get the full story. And I didn't think I'd have so many issues with this book at the end, but the end of the book is the worst part of the book, in my opinion. Because we find out that Harley's coworker, the one that was like kind of like, hey, you shouldn't be sleeping with a married man, she was kind of like, it's none of your business. That lady, that was the lady who wrote the letter way at the beginning talking about like the letter that got her fired. The financial abuse one where she told that lady to like leave her husband and stuff. That lady was Cindy, the coworker who works with Harley. So Cindy knows about all of these murders, knows about everything that's going on, and spiked Jesse's drink so Jesse would pass out in this scenario. And again, I repeat, a good plot twist is not a lie. Like, a good plot twist is like subverting expectations. It's not taking characters that have never mattered, that you've put no attention on, no foreshadowing on, like no interesting conversation, literally nothing. That's the only time Cindy even appears in the book, is that one conversation. And to take that and like, again, now she's a main character. Now she's this lady who knew about everything this entire time and has decided to participate willingly, which it's like, this also eliminates all of Debbie's descent into madness. Why did I just read over 200 pages of Debbie descending into madness over the course of 2 fucking days, which already doesn't make sense? Just to find out none of that even happened. And like, they're talking about all of this, like she literally says, I wish he knew it was his gun. Turns out she also sold Jesse's gun, not just Cooper's gun, that I used to shoot Harley, the one I took from his house a few days ago. First of all, they've put us under the impression this whole time that this like descent into madness, like I said, which already doesn't make sense, that this whole descent into madness that went from like her being completely normal to her like killing people happened in like 48 hours, 72 at the most generous. But yet now you're telling me, actually, it goes back days before that, and she had actually planned this days ahead of time, and she had actually gone in and she had stole Jesse's gun and gone to Jesse's house, which also, we didn't see Jesse's address anywhere. Because we see her go through this progression of like, I would never hide my location, to like, oh, I didn't hide my location, now he knew, and like, oh, maybe I should hide my, because she hides her location when she goes to the frat house, to like, I should hide my location. So she was having all of that. Then how would she have just been okay with getting rid of her location days ahead of time so he didn't see Jesse's house? Because wouldn't he have seen the address to Jesse's house and also been like, hey, why the fuck did she go to Jesse's house? And if she had just gotten rid of the, you know, deleted it out of there or like turned off her location, then why would she be having this big eternal battle the whole time about if she should have her location on or not while she's doing these things? Like, you're not making, like, you just lied to me the entire book, and now you're trying to say it's a plot twist. It's not a plot twist, it's just a lie. Like, you're just not telling me what's actually happening in the story, and you're just telling me lies, question mark? Because like I said, like, why did Debbie have a whole moral crisis this entire book about the location if she's been doing all of that for days anyways? Why has she been acting like this is only her and so worried about just her safety and if she's gonna get caught and all this stuff, but like we're completely ignoring that there's a whole nother person involved in this? Or like the fact that Cindy, like, none of this plot twist is satisfying. None of this plot twist like really truly makes sense, because the more you think about how we could have gotten here and how this could have happened, the less the entire rest of the book makes sense, because all of the battles we were having and worrying about didn't matter, because the whole time we find out she was setting Jesse up for all of this, because plot twist, Jesse is the dude who assaulted her in college. She didn't know that for a long time, started dating Coop, or for a little bit of time, because she started dating Coop, like, only a year or two after all this happened. So she didn't know who it was for a little bit of time. She didn't know this guy's, like, real name or anything. She goes out to dinner with Coop. They, like, together, a double date. Meets him, realizes who it is. That's why she spilled the water or whatever, that Jesse said she was jealous. It was because she was jarred. She didn't know what to feel. And then she has been plotting this, like, pretty much ever since. And she's had this very organized, premeditated plot of, like, stealing Jesse's gun, using the leather gloves, shooting Ken, using that against Jesse so he'll go to jail, on top of, like, stealing all the money, which is meant to set up Jesse, not Cooper. Like, all of this, like, all the stuff with Harley, becoming friends with Harley, to win this over, when you have explicitly told me that she became friends with Harley because she thought Harley was cool. She just met her at the gym and thought she looked cool and was, like, a cool person. But now you're telling me that she actually befriended Harley because she knew that she was cheating with Jesse, and she had this whole big plan of, you know, she was going to set Jesse up for all of this big stuff. So you've directly lied to me over and over again throughout the course of this book. That is not a plot twist. A plot twist is something that subverts expectations. I could not have even had these expectations because you were just lying to me about everything that was happening the entire book. I was so upset when I got to these last final chapters. Like, we watched her discover all of this stuff, like, in real time. Like, what do you mean? All of this has been set out for a long time, and she's, like, had this plan the whole time, when we saw her go through all of these moral battles in this book and, like, slowly descend into madness. If she already had the madness from the very beginning, was already, like, there. Like, what was all... This whole book, the last 5 chapters of this book make the whole book pointless. Every part of this book was a lie. All of this was just lying to you. Just so I could tell you the actual story in the last, like, 3 chapters. That's bad writing. That is a bad writing example. This is a bad book. I cannot believe this made it, like, through publication. I genuinely cannot. And then we find out, again, another blatant lie. In another chapter, it directly told us. She directly said when she left Zeta Pi that she achieved her goal and she burned the house down. Like, she says that directly. I did exactly what I came here to do, and now I am leaving here. And I need to leave here before people start finding out about the fire. And, like, Cooper hears about the fire, and people hear about the fire, and there's, like, a bunch of police and stuff around. Just for you to tell me I couldn't burn down Zeta Pi. I grabbed my purse from where I left it in the bedroom, and then I went downstairs and left the frat with the cigarette and matches still in my purse. In my head, it seemed like a good idea, but once I was there and talking to that nice kid, I couldn't go through with it. Besides, it wasn't their fault what happened all those years ago. It wasn't fair to blame them. You told me that you did it! You literally told me in this book that she did it. And now you're telling me that you just blatantly lied to me as the reader and she didn't actually do it. It'd be fine if you just left it ambiguous. And then I find out, no, she didn't do it, because I didn't think she was actually going to do it anyways. But for you to lie to me directly and say, hey, yeah, I did do it, just for a couple chapters later to be like, actually, just kidding, I was lying. I didn't actually do it. I couldn't do it. Like, that's not a plot twist. That's just a lie. And a good plot twist, repeat after me, is not a lie. And I think this sentence sums up, I think, what my frustration with the entire end of this book was. Why did I spend 3 days up this lady's ass in the most boring way possible just to find out everything interesting that happened off camera? And really, that kind of sums it up. Because, like, what do you mean? I have spent so much time with this woman, have excruciatingly... I have watched her make pancakes, like, 7 separate times in, like, 2 days. Like, you have given me all of these excruciating, boring, slogging details that I've had to deal with this entire time, just for you at the end of the book to be like, oh, by the way, so a ton of exciting stuff actually happened. We're not going to show you any of that. Actually, all of that happened before this story even started. So, like, yeah, it was kind of pointless that you just wasted all your time with that and, like, reading about this lady. But, like, but plot was, like, all of this stuff was actually planned way ahead of time. And, like, yeah, so actually, like, isn't that great? No, that's not crazy. Now I'm pissed off. Why the fuck did I just waste all my time reading all the rest of this book just for you to directly tell me that none of this mattered, and everything that did matter happened long before this, and it was all off camera. Like, how to take the wind out of your own sails 101. Like, how to ruin a book 101. So we go back to Cooper. Cooper actually, he goes to the other address, the one he didn't recognize, which turns out it's Harley's apartment. Which, again, have a really hard time believing she's been friends and hanging out with this girl for so long, and Cooper's never heard a single, like, hint about this. Which, like, to be fair, I guess that makes a little more sense when we have the knowledge now that she's been planning against him this entire time, like, against Jesse, and, like, all of this was planned. Like, okay, that makes sense why she wouldn't have said anything about Harley, but, like, you could have hinted at this or, like, explained this in some better way so I wasn't left so just, like, what the fuck, this doesn't make sense the entire book. And he obviously doesn't know that it's Harley's house or anything, and he's just, like, banging on the door, and he's like, Debbie, you know, Debbie, I love you. Debbie, come out here. Debbie, I love you. And so Debbie has, like, the gun in Jesse's hand. She's about to shoot him in the head with his own gun, kind of like, you know, set up, stage a suicide for him. And she hears Cooper, you know, banging on the door, and she has this moment where she's like, oh, I guess my life was good. Like, I've been saying my life is ruined the whole time, but, like, I guess it was good. Which, again, I had this issue with the frat boy thing where she's just like, well, I guess, like, it wasn't really their fault. Like, that happened a long time ago. I guess it wasn't really their fault. Yeah, girl. Yeah. Obviously. Like, that's been really obvious since the beginning, and it was kind of weird that you didn't see that, and now you just see that, and we don't even see any progression of you developing and, like, learning and, like, moving towards this. We just get, oh, yeah, no, I burned the frat house down. That guy seemed nice, but I burned it down. Just to, like, just kidding. That guy was actually pretty nice. I didn't burn it down. Okay. Sure. It was like, yeah, she literally goes, but that's unfair. My life isn't ruined. My life is good in many ways. Yes, I didn't end up with the career I hoped I'd have, but I have 2 wonderful daughters, blah, blah, blah. I have a lot. Yeah, girl. Okay. Sure. Like, there was nothing here that, like, changes her mind. Like, there was no character arc, there was no character development. This was not like she believed this one thing and now she's learned over all of her trials and tribulations and we've gotten to a good, like, final part. She's just there now, even though, like, 2 chapters ago she was just talking about how her life was ruined again, and that's all she's talked about this entire book, is how, like, all of this ruined her life. And now just suddenly she's like, oh, actually, my life isn't ruined. My life is, like, pretty great, actually. But, like, well, it's too late. I do have to kill this guy, though. And she ends up pulling the trigger. And so she goes out, like, the door behind the house and, like, comes around and, like, sees Cooper. And they have this big moment where they hug for, like, minutes at a time. Which also, like, girl, you just murdered someone. Multiple someones, possibly. Like, you need to get the fuck out of there. Actually, you should not just be hugging your husband in the plain sight right in front of this location for minutes at a time. And then he has this thing where he's like, Debbie, I'm an alcoholic and I should have told you. And she was like, I was raped. I should have told you. And they have this little, like, back and forth, and he's like, they're kind of like, we should have been better to each other. We're going to be better to each other now. And he's like, did you shoot Ken, by the way? And she goes, I didn't shoot Ken with your... He asked if, did you shoot Ken with my gun? And she was like, I didn't shoot Ken with your gun. Which is, like, partially true. It was Jesse's gun. And he's just like, oh, okay, like, my gun's missing. Do you know what happened to it? And she's just like, oh, yeah, I threw it away. Which, again, is something that's implied that, like, oh, she actually did that. Like, this is from Cooper's perspective, so you don't get her, like, internal thoughts, but it's pretty implied, like, yeah, she just threw it away. Which, again, where did this come into play? When did that happen? When was that about? Like, what? What? What do you mean she just threw away Cooper's gun? What? Why would she have done that? Where would she have done that? When would she have done that? What are you talking about? And then they just go home. They just go home after that. And then we go to an epilogue. And the epilogue really got me too. Because the epilogue is a year in advance. We start with Cooper, right? We fast forward a year later. He has started his own business. He started his own, like, accounting firm or whatever. It's doing really well. Him and Debbie are a lot better. The kids are getting along better. They're kind of just living this, like, happy-go-lucky, awesome life. Debbie did create that app, like, Punish Your Husband, and she sold it for a lot of money. I guess it's like an app where, like, wives can assign their husbands, like, punishments, like clean the bathroom or take the trash out, like, when they're upset at them for some reason. Sells it, and they make a bunch of money. And we kind of get this snapshot of, like, oh, they're just, like, this perfect little family now, and everything's, like, totally fixed. And again, I ask, camera. Cooper was on the camera. I understand that Debbie deleted herself. I get that all of the other evidence, like, really stacked up against Jesse. Like, she did a pretty good job framing him. Like, they definitely, like, they think it was Jesse. Jesse went to prison for it. They're sure that it's Jesse. But then again, I asked, the police investigated this, got all the evidence, you know, like, Jesse is in prison, and it's never brought up that Cooper was on the camera. Like, you're telling me that didn't get brought up? He wasn't a co-suspect? They could have thought he did it with Jesse. They're also best friends, and he was also on the camera. Or even just want to, like, question him about it, know more about it. Like, you're telling me if you brought Cooper into an interrogation room, he wouldn't crumble? Like, I don't believe that. And if they saw, like, they were looking over the footage and were like, hey, we saw that Jesse went to this house, because they point that out, like, Jesse was on the camera because he'd been asked to water the plants. So they were like, well, you were there, you know? So it's like, you're telling me they wouldn't have also gone, but also Cooper was there, so we should look into that guy or make sure that he doesn't have anything to do with it. Like, he's just never questioned, like, never, there's no hint that he was ever brought into that in any way, shape, or form. And that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. So then we fast forward to, in the epilogue still, to, you know, a shot from Jesse's perspective. And he's in jail now, in prison. And he is, like, getting beat potentially to death by his roommates with, like, combination locks hidden into socks. And honestly, love that for him. That's a real appropriate ending for him. Like, I don't sympathize with Jesse. Jesse is a bad person. I do not think Jesse is a good guy. What I'm about to say right now, I do not think Jesse is a good guy or a good person. He's a bad person, and I'm glad that he is beat to death in prison. Or maimed, at least. That being said, he, of course, is like, I'm innocent. I never did these messages. I never did these things. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't kill Ken. I didn't steal this money. And you're kind of like, well, yeah, he didn't. And then he, like, hints at, like, not hints at, he, like, directly says, like, you know, like, I haven't done anything recently, but, like, when I was in college, like, sometimes I would roofie girls, and, like, he's very gross about it. Like, you can tell he doesn't give a shit about it. He doesn't think he did anything wrong. Like, he thinks, if anything, they, like, enjoyed it. Which is, like, I get that. Like, we know that he did that. It's pretty implied he didn't just do that to one person. Like, I expected that. So, it's, like, one of those where you're like, okay, yeah, like, I know he didn't, like, kill Ken, but, like, he's still a really bad person. So, like, it's fine that he's in prison. But then, out of nowhere, the reason he's actually getting beat to death is not because he's, like, a sexual assaulter or anything like that. Or, like, or not because he's sexual, like, or he killed anybody or anything. like, killed Ken, I mean. The reason that he is getting beat to death is because there is another girl. We're introduced to a new character. Brand new character that is significant in the epilogue of the book, where he talks about how there's this girl named Misty Carden, and her brother is also in prison. And when they were younger, Jesse had roofied this girl and assaulted her, and she remembered it and, you know, told a bunch of people, like, hey, this dude, like, raped me or whatever, or called him, being like, hey, I'm gonna tell everybody you raped me, like, you raped me, that's fucked up. And he meets up with her and he kills her. And he's never been caught for this. Nobody has suspected him for this. Like, he has faced no punishment for this up till this point. And it's just like, okay, sure? Like, that's fine. I guess it's just another reason for me not to feel bad that he's in this situation. But I already didn't feel bad that he was in this situation. And it doesn't really make sense for you to be bringing up this new significant character. Because now he's changed. Like, this whole time he's just been a rapist. Like, the last 300 some pages, he's just been a rapist. Like, a shitty guy, but just a rapist. Already deserves to get beat with the locks. You know what I mean? And now all of a sudden he's a murderer in the last 3 pages of the book. And I'm supposed to, like, care about this or be, like... It's just so random and so unnecessary and so confusing, where it's like, what are you talking about? Like, I already didn't feel bad for him. Like, he's a horrible person. What do you mean now he's a murderer? And turns out secretly decades ago he, like, murdered this girl, and, like, her brother somehow knows, and, like, now that's why he's getting punished, because his brother knows about... None of that makes any sense. Especially when we're talking about it in the context of the epilogue. We end with a final shot from Debbie, and she talks about how they're going to couples therapy now, and the couples therapist thinks they need to be more honest with each other, which obviously, great therapist. But she's like, well, I can't tell him that I killed his boss. I can't really tell him that his former best friend was a rapist. Can't really tell him about any of these things, but that's okay. And so I told you about Cindy back a little bit, right? Real mad. Couldn't hold back about the Cindy stuff. This is where we find out about Cindy. Literally the last 2 pages of this book. This is where we find out that Cindy was a part of all of this from the beginning, and that she drugged Jesse, and that she was always a part of the plan. Not only was that so problematic just as an inclusion in general and as part of the story in general, you're literally going to tell me that happened on the last page of your book. You are going to wait till the epilogue to tell me all of this. Like, she literally has this conversation at the very end where she says, Cindy has been dating a nice guy recently. They're taking it slow, but I met him once and I can tell he's going to treat her right. Even so, a double date might be tempting fate. There's too much we don't want our men to know. Maybe sometime, I say evasively. I'm glad Cooper is treating you well, Cindy says, because if he's not... We exchange a meaningful look. Same, I say. Cooper has been really good to me, but I'm not too worried. Cindy and I will look out for each other. Nobody will take advantage of me ever again. Again! Why are we bringing another essentially new character into this? And into this is like now a main character in the literal epilogue of the book. And also, how are you going to get all the way through this book? Literally the note I wrote at the end sums up everything. So there really was no point in reading this book. Literally everything important happened off camera. Literally anything that mattered to the story or the main characters or anything in this book happened off camera. Nothing you read in this book actually matters. None of it matters. This was a terrible book. And I just want to end this with, like, I'm not saying, if you enjoyed this book, there is nothing wrong with you. You don't have to read every book and critically analyze it. You can surface read things and just enjoy the story. That's okay. I have no criticisms for that. You consume media however you want to consume it, and that's fine. However, I have read bodice rippers that had more cohesive stories and more well thought out stories than this. You expect me to believe this woman is a doctor. I think she might even be a brain surgeon, if I remember correctly. And yeah, she's a physician specializing in brain injury. And you can't connect a couple very basic plot points or, like, understand that, like, a plot twist is, like, a subversion of expectations and not just a blatant lie about what's been happening in the book. You don't know how to put anything on camera, anything document. I had to read about these fucking heritage roses and this photo shoot for 40 pages, but yet you don't tell me about two of the very main characters, and then actually introduce a third main character, that Misty girl that got murdered, in the epilogue. In the epilogue, I had to read her making pancakes like 6 separate times. I'm so glad to be done with this. I can't even express to you. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with you if you enjoyed this book. There's nothing wrong with you if you enjoy Frieda Mcfadden. I just particularly did not enjoy this book, and I had to share it with you guys, because every part of this book was a roller coaster in the least expected ways possible. But yeah, I think that that sums up our journey through Dear Debbie. I don't think I can rant any more about this. So you know what to do. Like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Of course, I plan to continue to do these and to branch off and do more. Also, feel free to always drop recommendations, because if there's anything, I love to read. And do I love to read good books? Of course. I will devour a good book. I live for good books. But also, we all enjoy a bad book sometimes. And this is fun. I like critically analyzing things, and I like being able to break down maybe why a story is not the best story you've ever read in your life. So I plan to do more of these, and if you're interested in sticking around, or like I said, making a contribution or making a recommendation, feel free to do so down below, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.